No, but I got a couple friends that I think would be interested and you're good at it.
I just keep.
She's barely been here.
I know.
She got here just in time for the opening.
According to what she said, because I was talking to her last week, she wants to start a family and not work much more anymore. Which sounded okay to me, I guess.
All right, it's 10:03. We have a quorum, so we'll get the meeting started. Beverly, if you take the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Chairman O'Halloran.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Hello.
Dr. Robinson. Here. Ms. Stone. Present. Mr. Durham.
Here.
Ms. Odell. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Luckett. Mr. Cody.
Here.
Thank you.
Pete called me, so I think he's on his way.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Kind of a stretch, but
All right, let's move on to the minutes from the last board meeting. And there's been a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or changes to the minutes? There were only 22 pages. That's nice. Not hearing any questions. All those in favor of passing the minutes, raise your hand. Opposed? Minutes are passed. All right, I'm going to move on to the chairman's item. Actually have two. One is to select the company that we are looking at to do our CEO search. I know we've talked about it, and I talked to almost all the members, and we kind of all decided on KL2 Connect as our choice, because of their vast experience with placing people and their connections to APTA. Can I get a motion that we award that contract to KL2 Connect? Bill? Second. Helen? All those in favor? Raise your hands.
It's much easier to say aye.
Yeah, but I can't count ayes.
that really
Okay, and the second item is the redesign that we've been working on for a year and a half now. And talking to Michelle, she wants us to come up with a set of numbers so they can design a plan for us to approve. And I know I sent out to everybody, I'd like to see what the actual coverage looks like and how we can work it into our system. I thought 70-30 was a good number to use, but we do need to vote on it so they can get going, because if they get the number today, we're looking at July of 2021 before we implement the new system.
I just have a couple of questions.
Well, we're going to need a motion in a second, then we can ask.
Move to approve a 70-30.
Okay. Do I have a second?
that.
Second. All right, Helen, questions?
I'm just looking through, and I understand I did not make the meeting on the 8th because I was out of town on county business, but I do, their analysis of, do we want to reduce the area and have more ridership, or enlarge the area and less ridership? I mean, we've been talking about this for years, but what I don't understand, and in looking at the graphs and how much the ridership has dropped, what are they going to target specifically for Chatham County?
That's what they need the numbers for, so they can draw us exactly the plan that would encompass. Then it's coming back to us to decide if we think it's worth going forward. Otherwise, we should just tell them, because they're not going to fix what we have right now. They're not going to say, well, add this, take that out. They don't want to do that. They don't want to put their name on it. That's what they told us.
And I'm only relying on past experience on this board, but we've entertained a lot of suggestions about ridership. And I want to make sure that we actually use this and that it is designed for us It's not, they pulled it out of, from another area because it worked there. I mean, I find it very concerning for what it costs to operate a system like this, that where our ridership is now. And I think that we owe the taxpayers of this community an honest explanation of how we're going to increase the ridership, and we're not going to plug in what worked in another area just because it worked there.
No, they're customizing this for our particular market.
Okay, and like y'all may have discussed that at the meeting that I missed, and I apologize, but that is just my concern, because having served on this board before and now looking at the graphs and the numbers just going down, and knowing through local taxpayer money, federal money, what we're putting into this, you know, what are we going to get out of it? And that's just...
Well, that's why they said it. Why I'm suggesting that we vote on it now is that we have to give them something to diagram with the information they've taken from us to chart the program that they think will improve our ridership for our area. Now, they don't guarantee that, because there's no way to guarantee anything as far as transit, because the trend nationwide is down. So that's not
Yeah, but
unusual.
it's specific. I mean, it's
specific for us, because it's
right, but it's way down for us.
and it's going down again. It was down this month over last
See,
September
and
of
I
last year.
find that pretty scary.
And the empty buses. Gertrude, I had you next, then Jay, then Bill.
Well, I would suggest, just for the benefit of the whole, that you explain the 70-30.
I get that. I mean, but you're right, for the whole.
I think for the benefit of the whole, I think, you know, you should explain the 70-30.
That's what they've been doing for us.
Let me jump in here, Michael. What we've got now, the two maps that they have, the two proposed routes that
On the
they
far
provided
end,
us
yeah.
just as
I read
as a
what-
concept.
yeah.
One was 90-10 and the other is 50-50,
Right.
which is very close to what we've got now, except that what we have now is not sustainable.
Right.
Because we're actually promising services now that we're not
I get it.
delivering.
And
The 50-50 they're proposing we can deliver. So the 70-30 is something that finds a middle ground between those two customized routes that they've already created.
Mm-hmm.
So what that would do is reduce some of the frequency in some areas in the 90-10 and add some locations that are not in the 90-10. But it wouldn't have all of the locations, all of the areas that are in the 50-50.
Right.
Now, I think in terms of the ridership issue, I think we want to be careful how we talk about that, because like Michael said, they're not guaranteeing a ridership.
Well,
What
not
they're
guaranteeing
doing is
that.
they're offering a route system that, because it's a higher density area
Right,
for
I
the
saw that.
ridership, and it has a higher frequency rate. The higher density of population and a higher frequency rate generally creates a higher ridership.
Right.
So, but that's, you know,
I mean, I
think
read the-
we want to say that right. But what we're talking about is a system, a route system, not a higher ridership project. That it's just that if we go to something more than the 50-50, similar to what we've got now, we should see an increase in ridership.
Right. Well, I read what Ms. Beverly sent out
I
to
got
get a
you, Jay. I see it.
recap on that. So
Everybody's going to want to talk, so we'll get there. Go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
However you look at it, however you play it, when you go from 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, 90-10, you're going to take routes from somewhere. And those routes will be in the unincorporated area. And those routes will be on the outside of the city of Savannah. Whether you want to increase frequency or routes, whatever, you're taking routes from outside of the outlying downtown area. There's no way around that. There's no way around that.
No, they're never.
And I want to make sure that's clear and stated for this meeting. Whether you go 70-30, 60-40, or you go outside of that 50-50 range, you're taking routes outside of the outlining areas. And I want to be sure we're clear on that.
And it's also going to change if everybody starts to opt in who has been given the opportunity to opt out in the past.
Understood, but the
Like
special service
Thunderbolt.
district, the special service district is the unincorporated area. the outlining area. I just want to make sure that's clear for the record.
And they are paying the tax.
Correct.
We can't take routes from Chatham County.
But we get ready to.
We can't do that. This is Chatham Area Transit. How you gonna take routes from the county? And the county's what's paying for the service. How is that? How are we gonna do that?
Well, we get ready to vote on it, so. We don't
No, we can't do that. The county pays this SSID all the time, every time. You cannot take routes from the unincorporated area that's paying for Chatham County Area Transit.
Chatham County includes the city of Savannah.
It may
Savannah
include
is
the
just
city
one
of Savannah.
municipality
It
in
may
Chatham
include
County.
the city of Savannah,
The
but
city
you
of
can't
Savannah is
take,
paying the bulk of that tax.
you
No,
cannot.
they're not.
They are not.
No, they're not.
They are.
They are
They
not.
are. There are more
And the-
residents in the city of Savannah than there are in the unincorporated county.
And you got Garden City and you
They
got
don't
Port
pay.
Wentworth, they also pay.
Port Wentworth doesn't pay.
A portion of Port Wentworth does pay.
Port
I found
Wentworth
that out
does.
the other day. A portion of Port
Blocker
Wentworth
too,
does
yeah.
pay.
The city of Savannah is part of Chatham County. You keep talking about Chatham
And the
County.
unincorporated,
It doesn't include that.
and the unincorporated citizens of Chatham County also pay
Are-
too.
They are,
Right.
and you
plenty of
cannot.
people
So
in
we
the
gonna
city
take
of
ridership
Savannah
from
pay.
them because Savannah pays the most. That's what you're saying.
That's what you're saying.
If you go to the 50-50 route, you're taking ridership, you're taking routes away. We cannot continue the route system we've got now.
If you go 50-50, you're not taking routes away.
Yes, you are. You are
No, you're not.
reducing some
Well,
routes that
if
we
you
have
take,
currently.
if you go 50-50, at least you being fair.
I would call for a vote. I mean, it is what it is now. We gonna be here
You
arguing all
cannot
day
take.
long.
We've been arguing this for a year and a half.
If you take routes away from the unincorporated
Let's get it,
area.
and we'll look at it. All right. I mean, this is a preliminary, this is a vote to get them to do a map. When the map comes back and we look at it and evaluate it, and we decide we hate it, then we
There
don't.
is, there is no
There's
map on the
movement forward.
70-30, Mike. There's no map on the 70-30 that's going to keep ridership from the outside areas, man. There's no map. There's none.
Can we just share some information, like you all have some handouts? At this point, what we need is basically just a decision from this board, as Michelle said, our consultant said during the 2 board workshops. She needs to know if it's the preference of this board to have a transit network that's focused on high ridership or high coverage, okay? Once this board decides what's the priority, what's the primary goal, high ridership or high coverage, then we need you all to decide where we should land, okay?
But this
Because-
question at the table, no, this question at the table doesn't say high ridership of that. It says a medium in between, which is 70-30. The question we're talking about is 70-30 right now.
Right,
And
and we
any
have-
map out there 70-30, you're gonna lose ridership on the outline.
And that's not including any of the areas that houses are being built in right now. All the way out there, Long Neck Road, out there on 17, out there where Keller's Market is being developed, out there where they just put, 400-500 families on the other side of 204.
At the handout materials.
And half of those areas have been incorporated by the city.
The
You're
handout
not going to get
materials.
ridership. Unincorporated areas are not the only ones that pay the taxes that aren't going to get ridership. There are going to be taxpayers in the community who do not have an access to a route.
What that
Period.
70-30 is gonna do is make sure that the downtown area from,
Which medium per capita is going up.
it's going up, it's gonna keep
all the
ridership.
four are going
So
out.
you're talking about from the river to Durant Avenue.
Somebody was home with that.
That's what you're talking about, from the river to Durant Avenue.
Okay, again, all she wants from us right now is a policy decision, a high-level policy decision for the board to determine what type of transit system Chatham area transit should provide. Should our goal be high ridership, or should the goal be high coverage? During the workshops, in our meetings with her, she basically said that those 2 goals conflict with each other. You know, that, and there aren't many transit systems around the country that can do both, unless they have almost unlimited resources. We do not have unlimited resources. Currently, we have 62 large buses in the system to cover the entire transit district. okay? Yeah, we have some more electric buses that are on order, but we do not have enough resources to do high ridership concept and high coverage concept. So we need a decision from you all, a policy, high-level policy decision on where we should land. So if you start with the 90-10, that's the high ridership. She's given us some information to share with you all that if we step down to an 80-20, what would that look like? We have information to share with you what a 70-30 would look like. If we decide right now to go with 50-50 high coverage, that is basically a status quo system like what we have today. The only improvement would be that we would add a pulled system back into it, which would help our customers make transfers, connections to other routes more efficiently.
And to add to that, I want to say if we go with a ridership concept, what we're looking at is about a 2% increase in job access, right, for the citizens of
It seems
Chatham
like, to
County.
me, and I'm not trying to cut you off, Mike, or Patricia off, and I'm trying to hold your question off, but it seems like y'all two were selling this ridership concept. Y'all not being, I'm just telling you what I'm hearing right now.
It's not our
It's
decision.
being recorded. I'm telling you what I'm hearing.
It's, you all give us direction. Our consultants are willing to design whatever type system that we want. All we need from you all is, what should the percentages be? Should it be 70-30? Should it be 80-20? Should it be?
But Patricia, I'm not arguing, and I hear you.
Because
Patricia, I done heard this 1,000 times, but you're not hearing what I'm saying, Patricia. You're saying, should it be this, should be that. What's on the table at this time is 70-30. It's
Okay.
conflicting the conversation you're saying.
Let's talk with you about what a 70-30 would mean, okay?
Go ahead.
We've
And I apologize, Helen.
We've had this discussion
That's
for a
okay,
year
but
and a
I
half.
have a question that I think relates
The-
to this.
Point here is to get them to design it at a number, and then we get to decide if that's what we want.
They could have did that before we had this vote. That's my point.
They-
They don't
they-
need a vote to design an access.
They
Yes,
gave
they
us the two extremes to show us where we are or where we might want to be. They're not going to give us every single step of the way. They're not going to give us a 5% increase and give us 25 maps. It's too much work for them. When they were hired for us to give them a system, or for them to give us a system and us to vote on it. And they gave us 5 options, and now we have to pick one.
No, but the one was put on the table was 70-30.
Oh,
I recommended that, and that's
Thank
what
you.
Bill motioned.
I just,
Go ahead, Al.
okay, so the way I'm looking at this and coming back on this board is what we're currently doing is not working. Ridership is going down. So what you're asking today is not necessarily to approve the 70-30, but for them to come back with the 70-30.
Yes.
Isn't that approving? How is that not
Wait a minute,
approved?
wait a minute. This will
We
get
get a
into the next
final
step.
approval after this system
So
is
we gonna pay
designed.
them to do all the
We
work
approve.
on the 70-30,
We've
and then we
already
gonna
paid them
say,
like 80% of the bill.
We've already.
we're approving it. Y'all stop playing with the words.
No,
Stop playing with the words.
I want to know, with
There's
this.
no way that you're gonna have these people finish and complete an entire project based on 70-30, and then go back to them and say, you know what, can we get you to round that back a little bit and try to do 50-50?
Yeah, we can.
We can.
But
We
we're
have to
gonna
go back up.
pay, but we're gonna have to pay them for that.
We have to, once,
We've already paid them 200 and some odd
Right,
thousand to
but
get
if
to
they
nothing.
give us
Not that
70-30 and we not approve it, will we have to pay them to go back and give us 50-50?
their
They're not gonna
contract,
give us 50-50, that's what she told
their,
us.
their contract
They're gonna give
is
us whatever.
is based on
Now,
P tax
now,
along
they're
the
not gonna
way.
give us 50-50. Now 50-50 is the coverage plan.
Wait,
Status quo, they said, why would they redesign the status quo?
But that's the coverage
We've
plan.
already,
You were there, she said she's
I'm
not gonna
with
give you
you,
that.
but that's the coverage plan.
Yeah.
So
That-
they're
So what you're saying is
That's
they're not
full
going to do
coverage.
the coverage plan.
they not.
Coverage could
So
be
this is going to
30.
be ridership
we're gonna
regardless.
do
It
what
could be
you
70
direct us
either
to
way.
do. This is
It's-
not our decision. We just,
Are you even listening to what you're saying?
y'all
They're
stop.
telling us that if they do a plan that's 70-30, and then we decide we don't want 70-30, then they're out.
You can just
They're not gonna do
call for the
anything
vote.
else.
They could do a 60-40 if we
That's
decide
not how
that
the
later on.
contract-
But if we
This
say
process works.
50-50, they can say they're not gonna do that.
They've done that.
They haven't said that. They've agreed to do a 50-50 that would build back in the pulse system. based
Oh,
on what
yes.
Ms.
He
But
just
y'all
said
just
they're not
said
gonna
they
do the
won't
They're
do
not
that.
gonna give us the status quo plan. They will not modify that. That's
Y'all,
what she said.
you cannot tell us conflicting stories at the same time and expect us not to pick up on the literal meaning of the terms that you are using. Either they will do a 50-50 plan that will include modifications, or they will not do a 50-50 plan because they said they will not give us the status quo. If we vote on a 70-30 and they complete their project at a 70-30 plan that we are voting on today, and we look at it and say, hey, that's not really what we want to do, will we have to pay them to come back and modify the plan from 70-30 to 50-50 or 60-40? Nobody's answering that question. And when I said, will they do the 50-50, there was a roundhouse of no. Then Terry said they never said that. So did they say that? Did they
said
not
they
say
will
that?
not give us the
Commissioner
status
Odell,
quo.
yeah, Dr. O and Patricia are saying the same thing. When Dr. O says status quo, he's talking about route changes. But the change that would happen is a pulse transfer change here. So there's no change in the route. We
No
add
route.
back in the pulse system to ease transfers.
But we
So
don't
that's
talk
what
about
she
that.
means by
That's not what
status
we're
quo.
talking about.
They're
But we
saying
don't
the
need
same
them
thing.
to do that.
And that's not the
We don't
question.
need Jared Walker to
And-
design a plan to add the pulse system into what we already have. Why
So
would we
then
pay them
why
any
are
more
you
money?
even telling us that 50-50 is on the table? If we vote for 70-30 today, stop acting like y'all not gonna go ahead and push that through. Stop acting like that. This is the vote.
Call the vote.
Let's just call it what it is and stop playing with words and stop trying to make people think that it's gonna be an option or stop.
It
So
is
I
an
can
option.
That's what it
take you through the next
is.
steps if you'd like. I could take you through the
It
next
is an
steps for the
option.
concept.
Just call
Okay.
the vote, Patricia.
Okay. I mean, it goes back out to the public for feedback, then we bring it back to you all. So it's not a final plan.
People about to get lost.
The unincorporated people are gonna be
Just
lost.
remember that.
It's called Chatham Area
Remember.
Transit, and
We
we're
have
gonna
that
cut down
option
Chatham,
because
the
unincorporated people
Chatham
do that.
area.
We all might get lost because.
Unincorporated
Well,
people
I
don't
think,
get left out.
I think I'm sorry, you was trying to raise your.
Jay actually said to call the
Okay.
vote.
Well, see,
I
the
said
more
this
this
time.
is cut out, you make sure you tell them.
I'm gonna bring it up.
Jay made a
at the
motion to
meeting.
call the vote.
I'm gonna bring it up at the meeting on Friday.
So let's,
If there's a
How this is
question's been
voted, I will
called,
bring it up at the
there's no
meeting on Friday.
discussion.
so let's,
But I
It's not a threat.
I didn't threaten
Well,
you.
I don't
I-
appreciate that.
But it's not a threat, Helen. It is
I'm
what
gonna
it
bring
is.
this up.
Stop
You guys
playing
fight
with
at your own
words.
meeting.
Stop
We're trying to
making
get
it
a vote
seem
on
like,
To walk out
stop
of this
it.
meeting, I've never encountered anything like
Oh
this.
my God.
My vote
Be
is
dramatic.
just as important as
It
your
is,
vote
and you
your
can vote any way
But
that
I
you
don't-
want to vote.
but
And it's not a threat. It's not threatening you.
you guys can discuss it Friday at your meeting.
I've already stated I'm gonna say it on
You
Friday.
can do it.
Nobody's threatening her. Let's just be clear, she
We
was
have
not
a
threatened.
point from Ty.
I need to interject
It's
something.
it's
This-
videotape, don't stress about it. Go, I'm sorry, Ty.
All right. I need to interject something. This is not in support of or directed at either position, but you need to keep in mind, as ambiguous as it is, the Chatham County Transit Act, and I'm not talking about the Chatham Area Transit Authority Act, that's a separate act, or companion acts in 1986. The Chatham County Transit Act requires bus or transit service to be provided, and I think I'm quoting this verbatim, throughout the district on a reasonable basis.
I agree.
And now, the problem has always been, in fact, I was even asked to give a legal opinion, what does it mean? Or what?
Or reasonable.
What does
Reasonable.
Right, that's
what does
the
reasonable
definition.
mean? And I rationalized it in a number of different ways, but you just need to be aware that the act as it's currently enacted says that you're required to provide transit service throughout the district on a reasonable basis.
Yes.
And in that case, guess who will determine the reasonable basis?
Well,
the organization that determines.
Well,
the balance.
one of the criteria elements of reasonable basis is you don't want to run buses where there are no riders.
Yeah.
So that, you know, it's ambiguous, it's vague, but you need to be aware of that provision that you're governed by.
And making sure that you do whatever's in reason to make sure that you're not
Right.
being deplorable against those riders.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What
We called for a
percentage?
vote at
Let's
this
call for a
point.
vote, call for a vote.
Discussion is, Jay called for a vote, discussion ends. All those in favor of sending the 70-30 plan to Jared Walker to design it for return to the board for approval, raise your hand.
All opposed?
I'm counting. Opposed?
All opposed?
I got 3. Pete didn't vote.
Are you
Pete?
literally going to ask him in front of me, who did you vote for? Did you just do that in front of me, Pete?
Now,
Pete, don't do
the
that.
last thing we voted for.
No, Pete, you just asked him which one did you vote for. I just watched you, Pete. Don't do that, man. You vote
He
for what you
didn't
think
vote.
you need to vote.
Don't do it, Mike.
I
Don't do it,
didn't
Mike.
vote because he said that. I've
You asked him a
questions.
question, Pete. I watched you ask him that question, Pete.
Yes, I did.
You vote for what you want to vote for. Don't vote for what he want to vote for.
I'm not voting for what he wants.
Okay, then. Now you can ask Pete what he wants to vote for. Because the camera's here, Pete.
Good job, Jay.
I caught it. And I love you to death, Pete, but if you want to vote for your conscience. Don't vote for what he wants.
I didn't vote for what he wanted.
All right, so which one are you voting for, Pete?
The
And
first
Mike needs to know.
The first one.
All right. Now, for the record, I read your lips, Pete. I read your lips. Continue on. No, Helen.
I don't know why we need to go.
Helen. The undermining stuff needs to stop, Helen. Stop it.
What did you get per account?
Do you need to do a revote? Since
I
Pete
may
now
have to
knows
do
he
it.
needs to vote for the first one?
Did you vote yes for the first one?
I did, yes. The second one, actually, well. All right, let's do it again so Beverly can get it all down. All those in favor of sending the 70-30 plan to Jared Walker to design for us, raise your hands.
Okay.
I have 4. Opposed? 4. And abstains?
I don't think you can.
Yes, yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, it's only on the commission you can't abstain. In this board, you can't abstain.
And then a tie?
Motion doesn't carry.
The motion does not carry.
Motion does not carry.
Okay. Then I'd like to get a motion that we disengage our plan with Jared Walker completely.
So move.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Raise your hands. Opposed?
Oh,
Pete, you can't vote twice.
You can't vote with Pete. Sorry.
I'm going to vote for disengaging. I'm not going to keep having this at every board meeting.
Did that motion just pass?
It just got him disengaged.
It's done. All right, next, presentations. DBE, we have David Stearns, our procurement officer. And where's the podium's up there.
I apologize, Mike.
This is the DBE program presentation?
Yes.
pass this down to Tabitha.
Okay.
Tabitha.
Is there a clip?
Good morning, all. My name is David Stearns. Nice to finally meet our lovely board. A good-looking board. Put a face to the name. My name's David Stearns. As I said, I'm the procurement manager and the interim disadvantaged business enterprise liaison officer, which is a mouthful, so we call it DBELO. So I'm handling the DBELO responsibilities in the interim before we can refill the position. So what exactly is the DBE program and why do we need it? So DBE, as you've probably surmised now, stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. Now, why that we need it is a mandate from the federal government. 49 CFR 26 says we have to have it. But beyond that, and I think more importantly, the reason we need it and we want it is we ensure non-discrimination in the award and administration of grants, grant-assisted contracts, create a level playing ground on which DBEs can compete fairly, and it removes barriers to participation for DBEs. Also, it assists our community in business development. We currently adopt a protocol where we help not only DBEs but all small businesses. So the idea here is really just let's create a level playing field where it's not the same companies that have been doing government business for 40 years are the only ones that can get government contracts. And so the codification of the DBE program is essentially to just basically ensure that we're doing what we should be doing to make it a level playing field. So, there we go. CAT's program, as implemented by the regulations, require a dedicated DBELO, which we do through the compliance coordinator programs position, and then when that position is vacant, it kind of falls to the procurement manager, which is why I'm currently the interim DBELO. And once we fill the compliance coordinator position, that person will be the DBELO for CAT. Part of that program is they have direct access to the CEO to make sure that CAT's staying in conformity and compliance with basically 49 CFR 26. So what we also do is we help businesses become certified as DBEs, because the Savannah market, when you look at it, there's not a lot of DBEs, especially outside of the trades, construction trades. But I have a feeling, and I think others have this feeling too, that there's businesses that could be DBEs. They just don't want to deal with the kind of application process through Georgia DOT. It's a little cumbersome. There's like a 6-month waiting period sometimes. And so what we do is we try to say, listen, it's not that bad, let us help you. We even have accountants that can help you understand things like profit and loss statements and how to set things up. So the idea is let's get more local businesses certified as DOT DBEs, and then that way we can have a bigger pool upon which to pull for resources to encourage work for CAT. So the federal regulations actually, they don't have any wiggle room. I thought about saying little wiggle room. They don't really give you a lot of wiggle room in what they say, right down to the very exact phrasing of what you put in a contract. They want to make sure that you're following their non-discrimination contract language, and that's fair because, hey, we're trying to do this nationally. We want to make sure no one's missing a little part. So 49 CFR 26, if you read through it, that pretty much is the basis upon which CAT's program is entirely based. And it basically mirrors the language in that program because, quite frankly, FDA wants it that way to make it sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, CAT's program, the way we try to go after DBEs, and we'll do this in federally financed projects and also just any regular general projects that aren't technically federally funded operating projects like, getting a company to do XYZ. We'll give points, and you're probably familiar with the point system. We'll score companies based on a criteria that equals 100 conveniently for those of us that aren't the strongest in math, and it basically equates to points. So DBEs,
No, I got a question that defense.
So DBEs are awarded 10 points, 10%. And if you use a subcontractor DBE, you can get 5 points. So the idea is listen, you may not be a DBE, but if you go out there and you get a DBE as a subcontractor, we're gonna award that effort, or reward that effort. And those amount of points actually can be very significant when you're talking about companies that are relatively pretty close when they're coming to bidding. So that can really make all the difference. So we also, as part of our DBE program, we like to team up with local people like the Savannah Entrepreneurial Center. They're kind of like DBE, WBE. And so we kind of team up with them. We like to kind of help and participate in community organized events, meet with the county's coordinator for minority businesses, and basically put on seminars and one-to-ones. So I've had DBEs come in and say, what can I do to look like a better presentation or proposal? And a lot of times it can be simple stuff like, hey, make sure you have a separate business account, not mingled with your personal account. It's very kind of, when you're starting out, you just kind of do whatever. But, as they can come in and we say, hey, set this up this way, answer proposals like this, make it very like, here's 1.1, here's my response. So we have one-on-one meetings, and it's nice to, I kind of enjoy meeting with small businesses and minority and disadvantaged businesses to kind of help them and get them. They can have started their business 1 year ago and with a little bit of work really be competing with some of the big guys. So CAT is required by the statute to set a goal, a DBE goal, every 3 years. This is mandated in 49 CFR 26. And basically what it requires is an internal analysis, an external consultation, and a publication and public participation. So the internal analysis is a specific calculation. We can't just make up our own analysis and say we like to do it this way. They give you very specific lists of this is how you calculate. And for instance, CAT's way of calculating it is you say, look at your projects, develop an understanding of what projects you anticipate, assign NACE codes, which is the National Industry Classification System, to those projects, and then see how many DBEs in your community are certified in those areas, and basically base that off your goal. So it's a very specific formula. We can't just say we want a goal of 10% because that would be nice. They make you show your math and your calculations on how you get to that, and then they have to basically, they don't call it approve, they like the term concur, but they basically have to concur with your goal and your calculations. So you do all your calculations, you submit it to the FTA, they come back and say, we concur, or no, do it again. And so that's done every 3 years. We just finished doing our current triennial DBE goal. It was submitted to the FTA on August 1st, went through some revisions, and we received a concurrence on October 1st. Our fiscal year 2020 through 2022 overall goal is 1%, which I'm very confident that we'll be able to meet as long as we proceed with the federal projects that we anticipate. So I'm actually hopeful and excited about meeting the goal and maybe exceeding the goal is kind of my internal hope. So the program was revised to more closely mirror 4926. That was actually transmitted to the board in June. We have in this, as of this meeting, we basically added the interim DBELO, which again is me, until we fill the coordinator position. And then we also, because we received the concurrence from the FTA, we put our methodology and our DBE goal into the policy. So we were able to incorporate those right into the policy because we were lucky enough to get that back from the FTA before we brought it to the board. So that actually kind of worked out on our part. So essentially, this is a very brief overview, but the program, again, is just designed to take historically disadvantaged businesses and help them so that they're on a level playing field. And we do that through points awarded, through saying, hey, come on in, we'll help you out. This is, my opinion on how you could make a stronger proposal. Why don't we get you certified? I notice you've been in the marketing field for 15 years, but you're not a DBE certified. Why didn't you do that? Well, the application is too much of a pain. No, it's not really. Let us help you. That kind of stuff. So I think for us, I'm excited that we have a goal that I think is going to be met by CAT, and that I think there's a market here in CAT that of people we can help. We can help become certified DBEs and thus increase our overall goal. That's kind of been the idea in the back of our minds. Well, how can we get higher goals? Well, you have more DBEs available. And so how are we going to get more DBEs available? Encourage people to become certified as a DOT DBE. So that's kind of a broad overview, and we're going to be asking the board to take a look at the policy and approve it. But does anyone have any questions at this point? I believe.
You had a question, Jay?
Yes, appreciate it, Chair. Can you give me a little bit more about the 49 CFR Part 26? It says internal analysis, external consultation, publication, and public participation. What has that looked like the last couple of years?
Well, it's generally been kind of the same. Now, there are 5 options within 4926.3. Dot 3 is where they tell you how to, 45. 26.45, they tell you how to go about doing the calculations. So one option is to use another authority or another entities in your market area goal, and then kind of scale up or down depending upon your own personal needs. The FTA has expressed a strong encouragement that they want us to use a different method, even though there's 5 options in the statute. They have let us know that basically they want us to use the option which is what we used this year. And essentially this year, what we did was we take the projects the best way to kind of level what we're looking at. So for instance, I'll use concrete because that was one of them. Concrete pouring will be assigned a NACE code, so let's say it's 53128. So DBEs can be certified as concrete pours, 53128. They're certified in that number. So if we know we're going to have projects, federally financed projects that are going to have concrete pouring, that's part of it. So we can say, okay, that's 53128 is part of our anticipated federal projects. Then what we do is we basically generate that list. And then we go out to the DBE list. So this year, we actually used the county's DBE list, Georgia DOT's DBE list, the city of Savannah's DBE list, and then essentially I eliminated duplicates because obviously if you're on the DOT, you're probably going to be on the county too, that kind of thing. But I did find like 1 or 2 that were on one. So that was just my way of making sure I get all the DBEs I can in Chatham County. Our market area was determined to be Chatham County based on who submits bids on federal projects, and the majority come from Chatham County or out of state. So Chatham County has been determined to be our market area. So we take our projects and we say within Chatham County, how many DBEs pour concrete, 6 or 8 or whatever the number will be. And then we go to the Census Bureau and we say, Census Bureau, how many industries are included in the pouring of concrete, and they'll say this is construction industry, it has X number of people. So that allows us to get the number of basically DBEs that we're going to. You take the total, you take the DBEs, you divide them by the total, you get a percent. So that's kind of how we're doing it this year. Previous years we used the airport authority because they're pretty close to CAT when you look at, size and they're in the same market area. Yeah, and they're transit, and so it's within Chatham County. That's the closest thing, basically, closest entity that would be dealing with DVEs. And then we would, using the factors in the statute, you have to look at like disparity studies, historical number of DVEs, and you have to go up or down on the other entities that you use. So that's all to say that's what's historically been. I think the question was what's different this year versus last year. The calculation method is a little different. Not all that ironically, it came out to about the same, which I was glad to see because that means, we're in the range that we probably can support for Savannah. And talking to the county's PD minority business coordinator, I was saying I'm a little concerned at how low, as good of a percentage as we can actually get. And he said, well, 2% is what we found to be for DVE goals. The county has higher goals, but they haven't been able to meet them. And so he said that's just kind of the nature of the area that we're in, given the projects that we have for transit. Now, if we were doing a ton of construction projects, we would have a much higher goal because there's a lot more available DVE firms in the construction trade and stuff like that.
I got a question. How do you go about selecting your DVEs, whoever wins the bid on this? Because this is my problem with the DVE system. You got unqualified people that are, just because they're DVEs, they're allowed to bid on these certain projects, as you said, concrete, construction, or whatever.
Yeah.
You got DVEs that's landscapers, but since they're DVE qualified, they can bid on these projects. And a lot of times they'll win this bid because their bid is low and you're going for the low bid. How do you do that?
Well, there's actually a number of ways, and I'm glad you brought this up because, that's definitely, just because you're a DVE, that doesn't mean you get a pass. You still have to be qualified to do. So the first line of defense, if you will, is the DVEs have to be certified in the type of project that you're doing. So for instance, concrete, I'll stick with concrete. A landscaper would be certified in a different NACE code that would be under landscaping. And these codes get down to every kind of skill out there. And so 53128 is specifically pouring concrete. So if you're certified in pouring concrete, then that means you are in the concrete business. And that's part of the application process with the Georgia DOT is kind of showing that you know what you're doing. You got to show financials. You got to. There's a vetting process that I can't speak entirely to how they would do, but my somewhat faith in them is that if they saw a lawnmower trying to apply for a concrete pour, they're going to be like, no, you picked the wrong NACE code. You got to go over to be certified as a land maintenance company. So that's the first line is we are dealing with certified DVEs. So they have to go through the process of being certified. Just because a company might be minority owned doesn't make them automatically a DVE. It makes them potentially a DVE that we could help get certified. But when we do a project, we're using certified DVEs, and the FTA only counts certified DVEs. So that's the first line. And then the second line is we still have, through FTA procedures and processes requirements, we have to do what's called a responsiveness and a responsibility determination. So part of that will be give us references. I'll check to see that they may or may not be an established business. We ask for financials. We'll get 3 years of financials. So we have to do our own, when we're doing like a RFP or an IFP, we have to do our own evaluation process in order to say, yeah, this is responsive to what we wanted, and also they are responsible bidders. So that's kind of like another line of defense is that they're essentially, they're certified in this realm, and we're still going to check their financial stability, their references. We call up the references and they say, oh no, they ran out of town and left it half done. That's kind of scored badly on them. And so that's kind of the other line. Then the overall kind of scheme is use of evaluation committees. And you've probably seen these things come through where it's like this person got 80 points and this company got 60 points. Well, that's all done very kind of mathematically. Like the evaluation committee has certain criteria that the board approves, and it can't be changed on the criteria that they score the business on. They assign points, and then we'll assign points based on price and whether or not they get DBE points or whatever. So if we're concerned more about the quality of a product, then the board, you'll see, will oftentimes approve 10% is price. Well, that means we care about price. That's a factor. It's always a factor because we want to be responsible. But we don't care about price to the sacrifice of quality and receiving what the taxpayers are expecting to be receiving. So it kind of balances between, okay, this is the most qualified firm, but they may not be the cheapest, and that kind of helps balance that. So does that answer your question on kind of how to guard against, well, you're a DBE, so therefore you get the role, basically?
Yeah, I like the detail of that you're going through, because you're going to need those steps. Because I've noticed that other jobs in the city, they just won't go with the lowest bid, and the projects are not turning out like they should be.
And honestly, that can be at a policy level. For instance, when the board receives a, hey, we want to do this, this is the criteria we're voting for. You know, if you see like a 40% price, that's where that's coming in. But if you see a 10% price, 30% experience, 10% references, and that kind of helps balance it. And this board does do, I think, a pretty good job of balancing price and quality. And will, of course, continue to do that, even on things that don't require the formal RFP, IFP process. If you can just go out and get 3 quotes, then the board, as you all know, anything over 20,000, the board gets to look at the entity and can ask questions like, well, how do we know they're a responsible entity? And then the answer is, well, we did this analysis. Hopefully the answer is, we did this analysis, they had great recommendations and that type of thing.
And I would add that there's no system where there's a quota, where we have to choose a DBE in a project. Some larger governments and municipalities say 20% of this contract will go to DBEs regardless, but the FTA doesn't allow us to do that. So we have to go through all of the vetting steps regardless of what the percentage DBE goal was. We don't just hand it to them because they've got the certification.
And I'll just add, and I think, again, the goal here is to make it level. It's not to give someone an unfair advantage. It's just to take away the disadvantages that they may encounter to getting government contracts. Yes, sir.
And the last question I want to say, as far as publication is concerned, can we do a better job of making sure that we get publications as far as when we are advertising DBE, so I can go ahead and make sure we're selling it to the community that we are trying to push out DBE. The other piece that I wanted to ask a question, and Terry might be maybe one of that, but on average, how many bids per year do we see where this is a necessity on average per year? How many bids do we go through on an annual basis?
So it depends on the volume of capital projects. For example, when we were doing the renovation here and across town on the buildings, we had a 10% project goal because we had huge construction projects. So we were able to meet our DBE goal and approach meeting that 10% goal when we had these big construction projects. In a normal year, we may do $400,000 to $500,000 worth of eligible projects. So 1% of that would be $4,000. Is it $4,000? Am I doing the math right? So we might have 2 or 3 projects that would have 3 proposals. So of the 9, we might see 2 to 3 that were actually DBE. So about a third of who applies or proposes on eligible projects. Now we do non-federal, non-DBE focused projects, and that number goes down.
And a follow-up question. The 10 points for DBE prime and 5 points for DBE subcontracted, is that a minimum requirement from FTA or is that a minimum requirement from us?
The points assigned is an internal decision.
So we
but
can
they
increase
do,
those points if we wanted to?
We could, yes.
And I will say that they're, the way we assign them, it's not like, oh, this person is using 6% DBE, so they get all 5 points, you're using 4, you get 5.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
my thing is, 10 points and 5 points, is that something by design for FTA regulations, or is that something we internally came up with?
We internally came up with that number. I will say...
Because I know that number is higher in certain communities. I've seen that number higher in others.
Yes, and it can be higher. The thing I have noticed, and this is more anecdotally, the specialized nature of the projects that we do, there's handfuls of companies that kind of do them anyway, and so there are a lot of times they're very close. So 10% can change it. I mean, I've seen it in a couple of things where 10% it's not insignificant. It's of course something the board can set whenever we kind of, talk about a specific project or
we can make it the actual...
Or we could have a policy set where, or a guideline where we like to see whatever you want to look at it. But I will say that 10% is not, it's not just, oh, let's throw this out there. A lot of projects come down to 10%. Because of the nature of the business, a lot of the vendors are kind of close anyway. So that 10% plus they're good on their price and plus this and that 10% can be quite determinative.
And we're looking to level the field. The theory behind the whole program is that we're giving smaller businesses the opportunity to compete fairly for federal money. So we're not looking to give them an advantage, and the 10 points has worked over time to level the scores, smaller business to larger. Yeah, this is really the only area that the FTA allows you to give somebody a preference.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we say levels. So how many DBEs have actually been awarded contracts?
So Jarrett Walker's contract has a DBE sub.
So it's a sub.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so they were
on the prime
awarded
side,
points.
have we done one on the prime side?
So recently, our projects have been limited to ferry projects, which are industry specific, the
I got you.
LDOT
Yeah, I got the
and the
ferry project,
boats.
yes.
And unfortunately, for that type work, there are no certified DBEs in the area. When we see a DBE is when we will re-implement our shelter projects.
Okay.
So we've got the opportunity for installation and concrete, and we're working hard to identify some DBEs, because if you think about the work, it's $2,000 or $3,000 a shelter, and the larger companies who may have filled out the application won't want that small amount of work. So we're looking for a small business who would qualify, that we could get certified, who could do our shelter, concrete work, the pads, and the installations. That's where we see the biggest opportunity for DBE. And then with the electric bus conversion and the Georgia Power infrastructure, we are meeting with Georgia Power. We're encouraging them to look for DBE subs to do some of the infrastructure work. With these projects, we had a DBE that did our demolition work, the concrete work. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to encourage Georgia Power to farm out as much of that electric infrastructure construction work to qualified DBEs.
Thank you. I'm done, Mike. I apologize.
I've got one question. On the compliance coordinator, is that a position already?
Yes, we had a compliance coordinator who moved home to take care of his mother a few months ago. So it's an existing position, we've had it for 4 or 5 years, and we are working right now to recruit and fill it.
So I thought there was no financial, I want to make sure that this was not a new creative.
No,
position.
it's not a new position, it was just a vacancy due to prior staff having to move out of state.
Any other questions for David? Thank
Thank you,
David.
Dave. Appreciate it.
Well done.
Because you knew I gave you the easy route.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
Good job, Dave. Thank you.
Anything from our folks that went to New York that was significant that we should be talking about?
We're skipping some of the other stuff.
That's next.
No, that was second under presentations.
Under here, I got veterans half price program, but
No, go under presentations, number 2.
I've got a couple of things. First is this sort of magazine newsletter that we got first morning. There's several articles in here that I thought were useful, and I've marked them, and I'll give this to Beverly so she can distribute it. But there was a couple of things that I thought were interesting. One is this becoming comfortable with autonomous vehicles in Jacksonville. Jacksonville Transit Authority has 15 autonomous buses they're starting to experiment with in a 3-mile route in the city. So anybody that says autonomous vehicles are a long way off is just wrong.
Like the Google cars?
This is a bus. These will actually be buses, small buses that are autonomous. They'll be working on a fixed route in the heart of the city. Pickup app helps address public transit needs in Austin. Austin contracted their fixed bus route and then created this pickup system, something like we've talked about at the on-demand service here. And I put a little expert by the article.
Okay.
So that could be somebody that could be a resource. In weighing in on employer anchors, this is something we've talked about a little bit in terms of Gulfstream or JCB or somebody actually helping fund a contract service. Plus shelter artwork, I'm sure you saw this.
Yeah.
And
I used to get that magazine, I don't get it anymore.
This was just laid at the door of the room.
Yeah,
No,
Monday night.
I think it's because I get an email version of it, and they don't send the paper version anymore.
Article. And then, actually, when Michelle was here, I asked her, because I've been getting a bunch of emails from VIA, about seeing them at the conference, and I never did see their booth, but in one of the meetings I went to, they had some material. They are one of the agencies that provide an on-demand service, and Michelle had said that of all the people doing it, they're probably the best in terms of cost and value. So if you want to share that information, that's right.
Thank you.
And otherwise, the sessions I went to, the first general session with the keynote speaker, I thought she was incredible. I was really surprised. I didn't know Mark Zuckerberg had a sister, and she was phenomenal. Randy Zuckerberg, she was terrific, and if you get a chance to find out more about her, I'd encourage you to do it. But one of the things that was interesting, because she went to work when the company was first starting, when Facebook was first starting, did a lot of work with them, and one of the things that she came up with pretty quickly is that this idea that everything is media and everybody is their own movie studio, and talked about how she was the one that actually started Facebook Live in a closet with 2 viewers, her parents, and how it just kind of grew into what it is today. One thing in particular is the expert niche. If you're going to get expert on anything, that expert niche is scarcity. It's got to be about something that's not readily available. Rise of the side hustle, where everybody's working on personal projects, second jobs, whatever. And then she was talking about taking time to unplug so that you have time to think, to get off of social media, phones and all of that. But she did bring up a couple of apps that were fascinating to me. One of them is called Run P, which apparently is an app you can use if you're watching a movie, and it'll tell you if this is a good time to leave the movie to go to the restaurant so you won't miss anything. I'm not kidding. But there's one that's worse. There's an app you can get that's called Nothing. And that's what it is. It's nothing. And the weirdest part about that is you can actually pay $10 for the Nothing Pro upgrade. It's still nothing.
More of nothing.
More of nothing.
So
you get
she was incredible. She was such a great speaker. So much fun.
Kind of like Pet Rocks.
At least with a pet rock, you had something you could stroke. You know.
Throw at people.
The cities and mobility class public transit mobility and managing the curb. That program for me was really more from a city council position about managing the curb and the public right of way, and how the use of the curb is going to change dramatically in the next few years. I mean, we tend to use the curb now. We tend to think of the curb as just a place for on-street parking, but that's going to change. We're going to have to start creating spaces there for autonomous vehicle loading and unloading, for rideshare loading and unloading, for transit, more for transit, and some things that most people aren't thinking about right now. It won't be long before we're getting requests from FedEx, UPS, Amazon, DHL to provide curb space where they can actually launch drone vehicles for deliveries. So there's going to be a bunch of stuff that way starting to happen. Also, managing the curb means dealing with micro transit like scooters, bicycles, that sort of thing. We're not going to see scooters in Savannah until there's a better way to manage them, if then. Something else that came up in that, which I hadn't heard before, but was paint as infrastructure, actually just using paint, street markings and that sort of thing is a kind of infrastructure. There was a Transit Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting, which was good because it actually was a panel with people from Baltimore, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Washington, Miami-Dade, and Baltimore, and just talking about how the transit system works with their Metropolitan Planning Organization. In those circumstances, the Metropolitan Planning Organization in those cases is really complicated because it overlaps a lot of boundaries, especially Washington, where it's actually incorporating 3 states and trying to manage all of that. But it's also a system where the MPO is much more heavily focused on public transportation and working with public transportation. One of the things that Washington Metro did, for instance, is they really focused on walk shed analysis, looking at all the areas in public transit in terms of what walkability was there, and trying to come up with comprehensive land use that included a transit analysis and bike and pedestrian planning, just as one of the things that came up out of all of that. Mobility as a service, we're going to hear more and more about that as we go along. A lot of the mobility as a service revolves around contactless cards, whether it's a credit card from MasterCard, which is coming, or the individual cards that agencies are using now, where in one case, one of the presenters talked about how their card actually is a trip planning card, so that it incorporates all of your trip planning from beginning to end. If you're using a rideshare to get somewhere, and then a bus, and then a train or whatever, and the fees are actually managed through that one card. And in some cases, those cards can actually take into account who has the card for whatever discounts might apply for seniors or for students or something like that. So that's just a little bit about what I picked up on. It felt like a really good conference to me. Plus, I got to see Tootsie and Beautiful, which were great.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else have something they want to add? No handouts?
I don't have a handout
I'm
this time.
disappointed. Here, I'll give you one.
Well, the reaction to the handout last time was interesting.
Only because I went after you last time. I had nothing.
It's really just incredible seeing, I think, the commitment that the city and the state of New York are making to the MTA and New York Transit moving forward. And just listening to the MTA director, which was incredible. Did you know they employ 50,000 people? It just blows my mind.
Their MTA board has just given them a $51 billion commitment to capital projects.
And in a quick math, that's more than 50, yeah, that's just a lot of money. I'm not making a good comparison. I'm just, I mean, they, and as they do that, it was so funny because they were talking about they're redesigning their bus routes, and in one sentence he kind of summed up what we were trying to do with our bus routes, and it seemed like what we find very challenging here sometimes, other cities don't always do. I did go check out the 2nd Avenue subway and went on a tour there looking at some of the art. It's really impressive seeing what they're able to pull off with the modern day subway system. That was the one that was damaged after 9/11, and they just opened it up last year or the year before, and it's beautiful. The rest of the subway is so much fun because it's so grimy, but that one's like exquisitely clean.
Still new.
Yeah, it's still new.
Did you go down to 14th Street to the transit and truck corridor?
I don't think so. Oh yes, actually I did.
Square.
That was very cool.
Union Square is a
above
great
ground.
location too.
I also did find some of the conference a bit repetitive towards the other conferences, and I think talking to people down here when they asked me how it was, it just seems to me that nobody really knows what's going on, and we're all just trying to figure out how to manage some sort of future that is very complex. And I think I told you, if somebody says disruption one more time, we should all take a drink, because the word comes up a lot.
Always.
Well,
Always.
the big concern is still what's going to happen with the FAST Act.
Yeah.
Are we going to
That's
get
a major part of it.
reauthorization?
Will there be enough money to get there?
And then just this came up in a couple different areas, but to sum it up, just the coordination between transit associations and cities and MPOs and the people building the sidewalks is crucial to having it all kind of work together. And the MTA was working on training the people who are building the sidewalks, the actual concrete workers, to create, the best thing they can. And there's training programs around that.
One of the things in terms of the repetition from previous conferences that I heard again, but I think this is something we're going to have to hear several times before it sinks in, is are you a bus company or are you a mobility manager? That's a big difference in attitude.
Because bus companies seem existentially threatened, but mobility management seems like a very open-ended horizon.
And a lot of these conferences are driven by the sponsors. So
yeah.
What you hear and what you get to is we paid for this. We want our plans out there. So it's not going to change drastically in the next 10 years. The same companies are still sponsoring half the stuff. So
yeah.
Anything else, guys? I
guess
know
what's
there's always
helpful for me is kind of seeing.
Dietrich. Why do I keep calling you Cody?
It's kind of seeing the limits of APTA.
I guess it's all one.
Well, and when you go and you see New York City, it's amazing how they can just do everything that they do. I was up there for 6 years, and it's like pick a spot, you can get there. It is a fascinating.
Yeah, I personally enjoyed all the sessions that we attended and everything, and what I mostly got out of it was about the people, about the community, about us. And one of them, they was stating the fact that we must participate in everything to benefit our community. I think that most things that we participate in, it helps our ridership, it helps us get closer to the community. It's all about diversity and everything we're going through. One of the last sessions that we went to, a guy named DJ Gupta, he put on a great presentation, and basically what it's about, they created a program out in LA, Street Center, and what that allowed them to do is get closer to the community. So like we look at people and you see a problem. But in reality, what we got to do is get closer to the community to help resolve the issue. You know, we can't look at people like it's a problem. You know, transit to me is about the people, and it's about our community. It's about growing our communities. So what we need to do, like Clinton with the art program, I like that idea.
I do too.
You know, what it does is get cat out there, so we can all get closer to the community involvement and things of that nature. I think we got to get closer to the kids, the teens. You know, I want to implement systems towards the teens. I believe if we get to the school systems, get the kids involved. I like the program that we attended at Groves High School a few months ago, and that's getting the kids involved in transit. I think if the kids understand more about transit, we can get that community outreach that we're looking for. So for me, it comes down to the people, and I think once we get to a point where we can get our youth involved, get our elderly involved, get our people in general involved into this whole thing about transit, it all feeds off of one another. We can increase our ridership and everything like this. So for me, it was a great experience, and from the last time we went, I got a little more out of this one, to be honest. Just like you said, you walk around and you got all these different groups with all these different innovations, and it is exciting. You know, we got the bus systems that's growing, like you said, in Jacksonville, and we can learn a lot off of this stuff. You know, but I think we got to get to the core of it, which is going to be the youth coming up in this thing, and once we implement a program to bring them on board, we can increase these things that we're looking for.
Yeah, even the police are realizing that.
Yeah.
You've got to start meeting the kids where they are.
Exactly. I know my son, he wear me out with Uber when I take the car from him. So I'm going to start putting him on the bus.
You're paying either way.
One of the things that came up in that mobility as a service thing was the idea of young people how the rideshare, like Lyft or Uber, if someone sends their kids somewhere that way, they get confirmation the kid was delivered where they're supposed to be. And talking about having that kind of technology.
Yeah, and it's going to change drastically after the few problems they had.
But what I was thinking too is, the school district plans to do this hub thing starting at the high schools next year. And I was thinking about transit and that they're going to need services.
Yeah.
So how are they going to do we have stops here in Hampstead? Do we have stops near these high schools where kids no longer will have, free bus service? So how do we capitalize on that?
Jay?
The main sessions I went to, first one was dealing with disadvantage as far as individuals who may need paratransit or anything like that, and how transit agencies across the United States have been losing that to like Lyft service and Uber services of all people. In actuality, they had Uber actually do a presentation about how they're becoming more innovative as far as getting into that paratransit atmosphere in communities across the way. So that was a very interesting presentation. The other presentation and it's an ongoing conversation, I think we've been talking about it for the last 6-7 years, is first mile, last mile. Talking about first mile, last mile, and how to make sure you're picking up persons from one place and make sure you get them to their destination. And I think that was a very interesting presentation. I really didn't, no one's hardcore about how to implement first mile, last mile. Everybody just threw around suggestions and ideas, and it's really based on population and density, and and I guess how your mobility is actually needed in those communities. And the last thing I want to talk about, what me and Cody went to, was the legislative agenda, and it talked about the legislative agenda as far as what act is going to present to the House and to the Senate, and he was optimistic because every time he went, and I can't think of his name, but I got it in my notes, but every time he went, either to the White House or to the House or to the reps, he got favorable conversation, and then a month later,
nothing else.
not just nothing happened, but the whole conversation just dissipated away. And so it's just like it's repetitive. It's just like it's repetitive. As far as, you know, they go to the White House, try to get some kind of resolution, but then it always falls on flat bases. But he said in this conversation toward the end, he said, no matter how hard the conversation doesn't go, he's going to continue to make sure that he pushes for transit. And so that was a good reference. But he made the point that he's had attempts to go there several times over the last year, and he comes out walking out favorable, but then in the end everything goes under the chairman. And I think and it's a point of the only way we're gonna move transit forward is we all gotta come together, whatever side of the aisle you're on. We need to make sure we're moving transit forward. So, and that's pretty much the gist of it. I got a lot of notes and reports and stuff like that. I guess I'll send that out to everybody on the board.
Yeah, whatever you think would be worth sharing, share.
All right, that's all I have.
All right, let's move on to action items. Michael. Don't look surprised.
I know we get there eventually. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first action item, to request the board approve of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, the DBE program. As Mr. Stearns just stated in his presentation, Title 49, Part 26.3 of the Code of Federal Regulations requires recipients of federal transit funds to adopt a DBE program that complies with FTA regulatory mandates. The DBE program presented to the board is a culmination of the procedures that CAT has already been operating under, as well as revisions required by the FDA pursuant to the recently completed DBA focus review. So in compliance with FDA regulations, CAT's DBE program strictly follows the statutory language of 49 CFR 26, and DBE program and a control log summarizing revisions are included with the report as attachments. So staff recommends board approve the DBE program.
Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Alan? Questions?
I do want to make note that this year, while we do pass this DBE piece, I want to keep a real close eye on seeing if it helps out with the narrative of making sure that we're identifying DBE, not giving them contract, but identifying that more DBEs are actually applying for these contracts. Because I don't want us to just say we're doing DBE and then in reference we're really not doing DBEs. I just want to make sure that is for the record coming out of my mouth.
And I'm sure the FDA checks that every time they come down and do a triennial.
But see, the FDA is just going to look at the bare minimum. I think we should try to be a gold standard.
We always want to do better.
We can keep up with that activity. Actually, when we do an RFP or an IFB, we go to the UCP, identify DBEs in our area and in our region, and individually send the procurement opportunity to them too. So we can report back to you on that.
A lot of letters there.
I'm sorry.
I thought you were repeating the alphabet for me.
Well, we just talked about the DBE, and the UCP is the Georgia Department of Transportation Certifying Program. So that's part of our process. We try to find not only non-DBE, but DBE qualified proposers for every formal RFP we send out.
Thank you. I'm still waiting on that acronym glossary.
Do it follow me around with a tape recorder and then just write all the initials? I'm sorry, guys.
It's a challenge. I forget half of them too, and then by the time I remember what it is, we've already passed two more, and I'm like, what was the other two languages?
I just looked up BRT, and I saw reference to it. I said, what the heck is BRT? Now I know.
I know
what a BLT is.
Yeah.
That's good. Call the mayor.
Believe me, I looked up BLT when I saw it. More than two documents are BRT.
BRT.
Okay, let's take a vote then. All those in favor of approving the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, raise your hands. Everybody.
It's unanimous.
Unanimous.
Okay, second action item, request the board approve a 6-month pilot program for area veterans to ride cat stick route buses at half fare. So according to the Georgia Department of Veterans, there's approximately 27,500 veterans in Chatham County. That was in 2017. The numbers are statewide is over 700,000. These estimates of both Chatham County and statewide have increased since then. Currently, there are several local agencies that provide a variety of services to veterans, and some buy bus passes from CAT for their clients. Others have approached the leadership team to inquire about reduced fare passes for the clients who are veterans. So staff conducted some research with other transit agencies to inquire if they provide reduced fare for veterans. Many offer area veterans discounted fares using the same eligibility requirements that's used for paratransit and for people with disabilities. So as you may or may not know, CAT currently offers half fare within its current fare policy for its fixed route buses for young people ages 6 to 18, people with disabilities, Medicare recipients, and seniors age 65 or older. So half fare for veterans can be added to this category of CAT's fare structure with the board's approval. So the financial impact is believed the change would be minimal. However, the 6-month pilot program would allow us to track the participation and report the results, and then bring a recommendation to the board to either continue or discontinue the program after 6 months.
I move to approve.
Second.
Questions, Bill?
I thought we talked about doing this as a free pass.
We did, what we decided would probably work for us if we did a 6-month pilot program so we could see what kind of participation we would get. And
So we want to try to quantify the loss of fare for the board before we say half fare
And go with it.
or full fare. And without the numbers for the formula, we don't know how many veterans ride our bus right now. So if we do this pilot, we can collect that data.
Right.
And 6 months from now, we can come back to the board and say, for a half fare, you're going to reduce fares 20,000, for a full fare 40.
Right.
So you'll know the quantified revenue loss with the data we collect.
You really think it's in the 20,000 range?
I do. Based on how many veterans in the county divided by how many population and a pro rata how many people ride the bus, was working out to between $17,000 and $37,000.
Ellen?
How do we track this? I mean,
Fare box, key. We'll
So-
assign a key and the operator will punch the key.
okay, I'm curious to know how it would be.
They have to have that pass.
Yeah, that,
Yeah, there's a pass.
There will be distinctly a veteran's pass so that how
Where
are you going to
the
track it?
operator will know to hit the veterans
Well,
button.
we'll do some training, of course, with operators to get them familiar with what we can do, but we'll keep it as simple as possible. With some of the other transit systems that we reached out to, they have veterans show their VA card or some other kind of paperwork for veterans. And so during the 6-month pilot, we keep it, as simple as possible for our operators and for veterans.
Okay. Thank you.
And there was only a few that we found that actually did the free fares. And the ones that did free fares, they were able to find other funding sources, to underwrite that cost.
Well, I wonder in terms of IDing of how that's going to work, and maybe it will. Maybe the nature of any veteran that's riding a bus is he's carrying a VA card or something like that. But I'm a veteran and I couldn't prove that to you.
Right,
Use
and
my driver's license.
I heard that from the State Veterans Affairs Office,
Yes.
that not all of them carry the VA cards. But then too, there's a lot of agencies that provide transportation to vets to get them to medical appointments and all of that. So that's why our executive staff, we thought that we should try this out as a pilot.
Well, I'm not arguing about trying it. I'm skeptical about your ability to track it.
Me too.
And our the
Just-
pilot program gives us the ability to work out any of these kinks or bugs that we encounter in the 6-month
Right.
trial.
I'm skeptical.
And the other thing is, I think part of the reasoning into making it half fare was, you can't do half fare there and say kids shouldn't have full fare, and this way everybody's at half fare that gets.
Well, I'm sorry, if
seniors.
you're arguing that anybody deserves free more than a veteran, you're gonna have a problem with me on that one.
Well, that's why I didn't give free to any, they didn't give free to anybody, everybody's gonna be at half, that's the discounting.
I'm okay for now. You gotta
It's
prove
not
to me,
really-
You got 6
you
months.
gotta
It's not
prove to me
really-
the
yeah.
numbers, and you gotta prove to me that you can track it.
It's not really off the table, but we need this 6 months to collect the data that will allow us to do the Title VI analysis, that will allow us to give you a
Well, there we go
recommendation
with Title
on the
VI.
non-disparate impact.
Okay.
of Title VI.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm hearing you, I'm skeptical.
I understand.
I forgot my question.
Go ahead.
The two things I want to point out that if this gets passed, I do want to make sure that we go out to all the different stakeholders and let them know that we are offering this veterans at half price, because that's the only way we're going to really truly track it. I know, for example, the homeless authority's gotten really deep in this veteran stuff, so that's one place I think we really need to make sure we talk to. And then the other one would be the veterans building on the other side of town.
Yeah, with that being where it is.
And I echo Bill's sentiment on the fact that there are a lot of veterans who don't have identification that shows that they're veterans. So how we're going to tap into that population needs to be discussed in the next 6 months. I agree with him wholeheartedly.
Is it gonna be strictly with a pass card?
We're planning to do
Tickets.
outreach. Again, we're going to do our best to keep it as simple as possible. A lot of systems are able to program their fare boxes so that a certain key on the fare box can be pressed, and then we can run reports.
Which when we get all our new fare box things.
And Mike, for the record, Bill ain't the only person that's gonna fight you about veterans. You keep talking bad about veterans.
I said,
I'm messing with you,
same for
man.
everybody.
I'm messing with you, Mike.
I'm gonna be 65, so I want that half fare too.
Remember, the veterans in the room have been trained on weapons.
Yes, we have.
And you train
And they get
40
money
years
paddles for using those weapons whenever they don't need to use them.
It was closer to 50 years ago.
Well, when we get the money to go fare free, everybody will have that.
I got you. Thank you, Mike. Are we gonna vote on? We voted. Do we vote on?
We have to vote on it, yes. We have
Now,
a
we call
motion
for it.
and a second.
We already got the first and second.
Yep, we need to vote. All those in favor? Veterans, good. Hands up. Okay, next.
All right, next action item, request the board approve, execute a one-year renewal option amendment with Squire Patton Boggs for legislative advocacy services.
I am going to have to recuse myself on this issue because of the campaign contribution.
So, Squire Patton Boggs was awarded a professional service contract for legislative advocacy services in September 2015. The contract has an original term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options. The current renewal approval requests cover services from November 1st, 2019 to October 30th, 2020.
Is there a contract in here?
I think,
The extension.
October.
Yes, the extension is in here.
So it's the original contract, October 20th, 2015, I believe.
Yes.
Both contracts.
So Squire Patton Boggs, one of the strategic initiatives instituted by this board was to, secure dedicated local funding that will allow CAT to pursue medium and long-term goals. Our work with Squire Patton Boggs helps us achieve that, and so we ask that the board approve this one-year extension.
I'll make the motion.
Motion, Helen, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I know these are gonna come up next year as full RFPs for.
I'm glad you took my.
I knew it was
right
coming.
out of
That's
my
why I wrote
mouth.
it.
I promise you took it right out of my mouth. I have no issues with either one of them. I gotta see Mike Becker every blue moon, so I know when that comes up, I gotta talk about that too. But
I'm gonna lend him the hammer in case.
what I do want is a fair and equitable process as far as when this goes out next year.
Yep.
We do it in time where we put it out where we can go out there and make sure we get the best options available. Nothing against the 2 options that we have,
Yep.
but I want to make sure, and I'm not going to repeat this again when we talk about the next line item. But when we talk about this stuff, it's clear cut as far as the goal is concerned. The limitation of how much money we're supposed to give per year, all that other stuff like that, needs to be made sure it's kept in line. So I just want to make sure I said that for the record, and I have no issues with either one of them because it's too short notice to even try to do anything like that. So I just want to make sure I said that.
I would think we would
I have one question.
have to include it in the budget so that we do decide to do it again next year, that it's been included, because that budget will be the one we decide on this year for next year.
I agree with you.
If as soon as it's included in the budget and the board indicates they want to move forward, we can put it on the RFP timeline list.
Okay.
And get it out.
Just like April, May.
So with that being said, I don't want it where, and it's nothing against anything, I don't want it where we didn't have enough time to put it out there, so we had to keep it. I don't want that. I do not want to hear that conversation.
Well, we can't
Would that
extend,
mean-
they can't be extended.
What I'm trying to say is, I don't want it where our budget time comes up, we have to keep them because we didn't have enough time to put an RFP out there. I don't want to hear that.
No,
We
we
can
gotta
plan right
budget it
now
first
to
and
issue
then
it next
RFP.
March.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's a 2 to 3 month process following federal requirements, and that would bring the decision to the board in July, 4 months before the expiration of this contract.
Okay.
So we'll put it out in March next year.
And make sure we budget it, and when does the final budget go out?
The final budget's adopted in April, but
Okay.
by March, we had the workshops that would
And we'll
give
know
us
it's
the
available.
input
Okay.
on board
Just
decisions.
want to make sure our
Yeah.
timelines are gonna work.
We wouldn't award until the budget was adopted.
No, I know you
But
won't.
it takes 3 to 4 months to do all of the steps in order.
Yeah, it's about,
So
yeah.
we wouldn't be awarding a contract until after the adoption of the budget.
And I will say this, Mike, I want to see a full out, true story well in advance of what the benefits were for the two firms.
I know some of it's in here.
I wanna
don't
see
know
that.
about all of it.
Shouldn't it go out like if we're gonna adopt it in April, shouldn't we send it out like in January?
So the budget will be
budget's
adopted in April.
I know.
But the
how can we
RFP
set
for
the-
services would not be needed until next October when this contract expires. So we would be using Square Patent Box through October.
But we set the budget in April, so wouldn't we need to know how much it's gonna cost us to vote on that amount in April?
It'll probably be a modification of the current numbers. and so
If it goes over.
Yeah, and budgets are estimates based on prior year and current environment. So we would not know the actual number on multiple budget figures when we adopt the budget in April.
So my question, if for future reference in our contracts, when we have, resulting in a monthly fee of blank, blank, blank for a total for a contract total of, I'd like to see what the total contract value is.
Okay, it's in the last section of the board report.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to see it on the contract, in the contract, that's what I'm saying. It says here, pricing is $14,170 a month.
Right.
It'd be great for it to go for a total contract value of $100 and some odd $1,000.
We'll make the adjustment before we execute.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's all. And if we could do that with all of our contracts.
What kind of cutoff do we have on this if we decide like mid-year we don't want it?
We would follow our contract clauses for termination
Okay.
to include legal input, and we would move forward with one of the available reasons to terminate a contract.
Okay.
And for the record, I don't have any problem with either one of them. They provide a good service. I just want to make sure that we're open-minded as far as how we do this.
So we have a motion. Oh, can we get some of our board members back? Well, we got 3 outside. Doran's gonna stay out there. We need the other 2 back. We're voting.
Well, you can stay out. I mean, we don't have enough people.
On these renewals.
There is already
Yes,
understanding.
sir.
We ain't
Our
voting.
In
renewal.
the past, sometimes in the
We'll tag
past,
it. Yeah.
we had renewals
Okay.
of contracts that never even came to the board. That has happened in the past. And, well, you see, our director here agrees with it. Well, I mean, that's really important that we have that, because all of a sudden, you take like you have
challenged something on that, and we haven't even known anything about it other than when you, challenged it.
I think some of it.
Well, I appreciate the fact that this is being brought to the table. Can we go ahead and move for approval?
Yeah, I'm just saying on some of them,
Let's move forward.
it depends on the value of the contract as well.
I got
If
you.
it's $1,000 a month with Xfinity, we don't bring that up for board approval because
Well, because it's
within the
under
reasonable
threshold
range.
But
Yeah.
these things are above the threshold point, so these things should be brought to the board.
Yes and no. But we do it anyhow, so it's already in the process.
All right. Well, I appreciate
Okay.
you bringing it to the table. Can we move
Are all our
forward?
voters in the room? Okay.
He can't vote.
I know. Everybody who's in favor of approving the Squire Patton Bog contract? Everybody?
Yes.
Moving on to
request
state and
the board-
local, Michael.
Yes.
So moved.
Michael and Michael.
So moved.
Well, he got to read it first.
Request the board approval for execute 1-year renewal option amendment with the backer firm for state and local legislative advocacy services. Advocacy services.
So moved. Second.
Just to throw in a note, we do get monies from the work that Mike does, so we're also getting a lot of help, only like 12 million over the last couple of years. It's nice to have, especially for the price. First, I heard Helen.
You already got it first, you got a second.
Who was the second? Any discussion on the motion?
I just like the same edit that I made.
Yeah, it's going to be on both of those contracts.
Okay.
All those in favor? Raise your hand. Thank you, everyone.
Can I also ask a favor? Anytime I have to recuse myself in the future, whoever leaves that big bowl of candy out there, would you please?
This is not a buffet.
I have
You
no
get donuts,
willpower.
candy,
How many pieces you get?
You want a protein
Well, I've
bar?
had two, but then you call me back in, or I'd have gone deeper.
You're welcome.
Use a cocktail. See, people have heard converted.
Now I'm gonna give you this.
Okay, moving along.
Let's see. Request board approval, the submission of grant application to the FTA for transit-oriented development planning funds.
DOD.
I'm sorry?
DOD.
DOD. Yeah, DOD.
We had a suggestion that I picked up at some conference before to try to start using the term COD, community-oriented development, instead of transit, because the whole point is to create neighborhoods.
We're customer oriented.
Is this, you need a motion first?
Well, I don't think he's.
No, he's still reading.
So the FDA released a notice of funding opportunity on September 18, 2019, announcing an opportunity to apply for a portion, approximately $19.9 million funding under the pilot program for TOD planning. The CAF staff will collaborate with the MPO and the City of Savannah staff to determine if a viable qualifying project can be developed. Current project ideas include BRT on Abercorn Street, BRT on Waters Avenue, BRT from downtown to the new arena. Also, eligible projects could be water ferry operations. If awarded, the grant funds would provide assistance for 80% of eligible planning costs related to a qualifying project. Staff recommends the board approve the submission of the grant application to the FTA for planning assistance.
And you note the date on that is November 18th, so
Yes.
we need
So it's
to
next
move on
month.
it if we.
Move to approve.
Second.
Question.
Question.
There's no, other than these just general concepts that you've got in here, there's nothing in the, you don't have a plan right now. This is just to get the money to
Yes.
explore these possibilities.
Correct.
We'll use it.
I'm sure we will. Where does the match come from?
To be determined.
Yeah.
DVD.
So
That
SPLOST
might
would
be
not
less.
be an eligible local
Right.
match for planning funds. This particular grant has a very narrow eligibility focus, so it has to be new fixed guideway, which is our ferry, or core competency, which is an expansion of a fixed skyway. And that's why the BRT, the bus rapid transit ideas are the ones that are mentioned here. You have to either have a new bus rapid transit with a segregated lane or a new part of a fixed skyway, existing fixed skyway, which is our fare.
We can still use city work as something the city's investing in as of.
Move forward on the project, yes, but for planning funds, there would have to be a different type of local match. These kind of grants are not going to be $1.5 million, $2 million. It's going to be in $100,000 increments, 3, 4, 500,000. So the local match is not as large as it usually is, but we would have to come up with a combination of CAP and stakeholder local match outside of SPLOST for this particular grant.
And this is basically doing paperwork to get a project up there that we can go forward with. It's not funding the project. It's funding the planning to go to a project that they would want to fund somewhere down the road.
Would be conceptual planning or all the way through to specifications for
Preliminary
implementation?
phase planning for a new fixed skyway or a major addition to an existing.
And are we talking about the other 20%?
The local match piece, yes ma'am. Usually when we apply for the grants, we're required to show a 20% commitment, and they give us 80 cents on the dollar.
And we've identified the expansion project or the other pieces?
So the grant deadline is before our next board meeting, and if we're going to move forward, we need your approval today. But the MPO and the City of Savannah and CAP are going to collaborate and make sure that there's a viable project.
Okay.
You have to have a stakeholder that has land use authority. So
Yeah,
we would have to have a commitment from the City of Savannah, and we're working on setting that meeting as soon as possible.
And the MPO does meet the end of this month.
Right,
We have
so
once we get the
chance to
vote,
bring
once
it
we
to
get the
them.
vote or
Yeah.
approval or not, then they can move forward.
Right, if we don't come up with an eligible project that is relevant and viable, then we won't apply.
Okay.
But we didn't want to miss the opportunity
I
to
respect
do
that.
it, so we're asking for approval before we all meet to determine a viable project.
And we've already.
We've got a motion and a second.
All right,
Any other
move for
questions?
Second.
Move for approval.
Who did that?
Oh, I'm sorry. We need
Vote. We got a vote.
Vote, move to vote.
All those in favor? Everybody. I'm glad no one turned down money, or at least the potential for money. That's not guaranteed. Last but not least,
So request the board approve payment of CAT's 2019 American Public Transportation Association APTA dues in the amount of $26,000. As we heard earlier today from our board members, although there was some redundancy in some of the events, that there was some good information that came out of APTA. APTA's nonprofit organization, more than 1,500 public and private sector transit organizations. And APTA is the only organization in North America that presents all models of public transportation, including bus, paratransit, light rail, commuter rail, subways, and et cetera. So staff recommends the board approve the payment of APTA for CAT 2019 membership dues in the amount of $26,000.
So move.
Seconds.
any questions for Mike?
The only question I have with Mike is with this membership, I think moving forward, we need to be a little bit more strategic as far as how we implement our structure. It's good that we go to separate meetings and stuff like that, but strategically understanding how we envelop our relationship within APTA is crucial. I go when we go, in all the conferences we go to, I make sure that I try to join a board or try to do something so I can actually become an integral part of that organization, and that is the only way we're really going to be able to bring those kind of resources down here. I do enjoy the relationships, and I do learn a lot, not just from the conference itself, but some people, board members from other organizations. I do think it's crucial, but I just think we need to put more effort into making sure we build a stronger relationship within the APTA, especially when we're spending that kind of money. We need to have a better relationship.
And we know Clinton is on one of the national committees.
Well, I'm on the national committee too.
Which one's you on?
Diversity.
Okay.
I also know that we only had one employee up there, you were up there, and then 4 board members. would it be interesting for us to consider switching that around so we have more consistency of executive staff going to APTA and less of our board members?
I guess Terry can explain how it was
So
budgeted.
it was a location decision this time. Usually there are 3 to 4 staff that go to, but because it was in New York City, we were trying to stay within the budget, and we deferred to the board for this trip, and 2 chiefs stayed home.
I just think for the organization of CAT might get more out of it if you guys were going to APTA, because it's very cool. It's
Plan
cool.
going
And
forward.
I don't want to not go,
yeah,
don't worry, but.
Right, plan going forward, and it's in the detailed training that the board approves every February and March for the upcoming budget, is that chief and staff and board go.
Yes.
But because this particular conference was in
This
New York,
was a little more
it was
costly.
more expensive,
Yeah.
so we sent the board, but we plan to go with you going forward.
Cool.
And my thing is, I agree with you, but I also think that us as board members have to have that continuity as well, because it's a lot of board members that do a lot of conversation with those things.
Yeah. And I think the plan is for 3 and 3.
That's
not
the
one or
compromise
the
in
other,
my
not one or the
opinion.
other. We just
That was
gave
the
our
plan.
budget funds to you guys so we could stay within budget.
I mean, because I enjoyed the conversation, and I didn't even talk about it earlier, but I learned a lot more about Mike and having that conversation. Me, Mike, and Cody sat at the table at the leadership, and we learned a lot about each other. So I enjoyed that piece. Now, those are those kind of moments I actually get to learn the executive board members.
I agree.
Did we vote on
No, we're about to go in.
it? Okay. It's motioned and seconded. That's what I was asking. All those in favor? I was just waiting for you to poke her. I couldn't see her behind Bill. All right, let's see if we can go quickly through this next group of items. I think I don't know if we have any major questions.
Had to be excused.
Okay. You know Jay has to go too.
You remember.
I tried to.
I was going to say on the executive director's report, can I just point out, I just wanted to highlight a letter that we did receive from Dennis Jones.
Good.
Which sent it to Chatham Area Transit as a whole, but to Erica Franklin, our director of safety and training, just really highlighting our role in the evacuation efforts for Hurricane Dorian. And I just wanted to point that out and acknowledge her and her staff and everyone at Chatham Area Transit, their role in helping out with Hurricane Dorian. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah,
Didn't see it.
definitely a lot of experience on handling hurricanes.
What about the suggestions that,
Yes, go ahead.
what about the suggestions we made with respect to the next preparation for hurricane?
I'm sorry, you have to refresh my memory.
We talked about
think last
the
month we talked about it.
confusion that took place during that time,
Yes.
and us having some meetings with staff
Mhm.
to get a list of volunteers prior to the hurricane, people who understand that they will stay until a certain time, and reiterating the job descriptions and the termination, the term of necessary employees, who will stay, who will not stay, so that we're not seeking volunteers while a hurricane is upon us.
Yeah, and we have, those policies are in place. I
Right.
think what we need more than anything, Commissioner Odell, is just a refresher, because there was a little miscommunication.
Right, but we
Yes.
said that we were gonna do that at some point, you know, so that
I
people
think
would.
the major confusion was with the union president, who apparently sent the letter saying that no one was told anything, and most of what he said was not true.
Yeah, we had.
Right, but there were a lot of employees who did not seem to know that they were supposed to stay. And if they volunteer to stay, then it's our assumption that they've made plans for their families. Their assumption was that they had to leave to go take care of their family. It wasn't just him. We got emails and calls So we talked about having meetings with the employees, discussing what that volunteerism meant, and having lists prepared prior to, who were aware that they would stay and what was going to happen. We talked about like a re-education of that procedure.
Yes, and then that's ongoing. That list actually was prepared before the evacuation. The confusion came in when the governor went on TV and said we're going to have a mandatory evacuation on that Tuesday, and at that point it kind of it happened so fast. It was almost like it was premature a little bit, because usually we give them 24 to 36 hours to make sure they can evacuate if they want our employees. And when he made that announcement, it was actually, I believe, close to that 24, 36 hour range.
It was. It was 30. It was like 36.
It was close to 36. So the timeline kind of threw it off a little bit, but it's ongoing, and we are having those conversations. We're still in negotiations actually next week, and that'll probably come up in negotiations, so we can clarify it and get some clarity. I think it's important that we do. I agree.
Because it was a lot of people who seemed to not understand. And we don't want to have, and we can't predict the path of storms.
Right.
We don't know when they'll move up evacuations, when they'll delay evacuations. So it's very important that we have people who are going to stay, who have contingency plans it's not wrong if they don't volunteer.
Right.
We just need to know who does, who can, and will be able to coast with that ever-moving, alive schedule, because those schedules are alive. They grow, they move, they weave, their own path.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would help if we, do that re-education and make sure that we're clear, make sure that they're clear, and people are not unhappy.
We can incorporate that in our next round of safety meetings, which I believe are.
How often do we review the plan with staff?
So typically we do our presentation in like April.
Before the season starts.
Before the season starts, and then we talk about it throughout the year about preparedness. We do campaigns on how to prepare your family and your role with Chatham Transit. So it's ongoing, but we do the bulk of it in like April, right before season starts.
But there's always going to be some that says, "Oh, they never told me," because
right.
It
So we
fit
should.
out
So
to their plan.
maybe next year, right before the season starts.
That's April for June 1st.
Yeah. We get them to,
Until it happens, then they're going to say, "No one told me," and that's
right.
That's standard.
But do we get them to sign off on these trainings? Everybody signs off on the trainings?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
And of course, you guys got all the calls. We got the one letter from the head of the union that everybody was confused, and that was it.
Yeah, and we get the calls from the grandmas.
But they didn't call
and
us.
The aunts. Because, grandma's mad because her grandbaby is going to die in a flood.
Yeah, that's how it works.
You had a remark from behind you, I think.
Is Wendy?
I think
No, go ahead.
we're going to define, we're going to work in the MOA when we do the change. It's really when it started with the public evacuation. I think that was the confusion, and we identified that, and we're going to put that in that language in the MOA. So we had a list of volunteers. We do that every board change. So we had a list of volunteers. We did not use, it was the public evacuation, when they triggered the public evacuation, they should have been operating in volunteer mode. In hindsight. So that's going to be defined, and that will be defined in the MOA.
Okay. We're learning it.
And
then
pay structure and everything else that goes with that. So.
Okay, that's great. I think it's very important that we as clear as we can be.
Yeah, I think that was really what caused more of the confusion. Not people not understanding their role, just about the volunteer part was, I think, what I felt like was the
And that was really that Tuesday, the public evacuation. That really was the day in question.
Okay, and then my other question is about when we have a health issue, like we had a health issue with we had to have garbage bags. Yeah. that, how are we going to? Because that was observed, and it was translated in us being racist and derogatory against poor people.
Well, I mean, I don't.
What's that
Was this
one?
people evacuating the garbage bag?
She's talking about bed bug visitation.
Oh,
Yeah.
that one particular.
Yeah, it puts us in kind of a awkward situation.
I know.
Because we're here to help the community and evacuate folks, but
Right.
at the same time, we have to consider the health of our employees.
How do
as
we,
well.
I mean, do we work with the health department when people are evacuating? How do we know that a person may have bed bugs or lice or something
The
before
health
they get
department
on?
flags
They flag them.
because it was reported from Augusta that there was an infestation at one of the shelters.
So do they flag them before, but they flag them after they're in the shelter?
Right.
Yeah, and then when they were arriving here, it was made known to us who that individual was, and we had transported them
Right.
separately.
They had already, so the health department had already flagged this, I guess probably the specific situation you're talking about, scenario.
Okay.
And they had bagged their belongings, double bagged, and made us aware because, it's public transit and, we have to take that vehicle out of service, and under federal regulations or even ADA guidelines, if it causes a disruption or we have to take the vehicle out of service to have it bombed, we could refuse service, but we didn't.
Yeah.
We made an accommodation, and transported that person home. And we had to have the vehicle inspected afterwards and pay that bill.
Okay.
We made the accommodation, and we have.
And they said, do we
And
take
that's
pets, too?
always gonna happen with, the bed
Have
bugs
fleas and everything else on the bus.
health issues and concerns.
all the time.
We just made the best accommodation that we
One
could.
second.
In situations like this, we need to make sure that all the TV stations have the important information, you can go to a bus stop, it ain't gonna cost you anything. There's lots and lots of things that are really important that the public, so some listens and watches this station, situation like that, but we must have somebody, more than one person, making sure that all the TV stations are going to put out the information about CAT.
I know WSAB did, because that happens to be the one I watch, but we do send notices.
We have a really good plan. Yeah, Eric did
It's in the plan.
Do we work, is it possible for us to work with Chatham County Animal Control or maybe with one of the vet associations so that when we're taking pets, they can be inspected and treated or sprayed or something, or?
Animal Services does handle that. They have a branch
Okay.
in the EOC, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they check them before they get on board.
I know. Prevent the animals from.
No,
You don't wanna know
I mean,
what
they've been on
you
the, you've
don't
seen
wanna know
the
what
press
they
conferences, they tell them to have their vaccination records and all
Yeah, I
that.
mean, I don't want to
but
prevent
they
them,
don't.
but maybe they can just put, the spot treatment on them and the fleas can be dying as they get on
They
the,
don't
on the
check
bus.
I don't know if I want them on there with that treatment, because you're not supposed to touch the dog after you put it on them either.
The
For like
word
12
we hear
hours.
most is flexibility.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of things that could happen,
A lot
but
of exceptions and a lot of flexibility and patience.
every time you have a rule, there's an exception. Anything else, Mike, while you were up?
No.
You want to hit service delivery really quick?
I would just say
We know
that
the
service
reports
delivery
are all in
reports are in your packets, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, anyone? I know I looked through the reports, the numbers are going down as usual.
Some of that was because of the storm, though.
Some
Yes.
of it's the storm.
Yes, some of it's storm
Yeah,
related.
unfortunately, month to month, sometimes you get fluctuations. It depends on rainy days, hot days, holidays. All right, system development, Patricia.
I'll just say that the report's in your packet for the sake of time. If you have questions.
It's good to see the electronic media things are moving forward. When we eventually get to electronic ticketing, we'll be ready to go. Financial updates.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I
one
didn't
more
see your hand.
thing. make sure that the information that gets to all the stations, the TV station, that it's the same message. In other words, we don't want, one station to be being priority for it. And so it's important and very important that the messages that get to the TV stations are all the same.
And they're the ones telling us when the storm's moving, so they're pretty well connected to these as well. I think they had like half-hour updates on SAB on where the storm was, like hour by hour, where it was moving and changing the borders.
And they actually called me to do an interview. I was going to do a live interview,
like
but I
10
got bumped by the governor of North Carolina. So go figure.
Oh, wow.
By the time it hit there, they could have interviewed him on Friday. So that's just.
You have to remember with the media stuff, though, it's, whatever we send them, it's up to them what they use.
What they're going to post. That's true.
We have no control over what they do.
Yeah, and they're pretty consistent with something like that because they realize the dangers that are involved. If we blow a hurricane evacuation and someone dies, it would be like tragic. So I think they're aware of that too.
And we coordinate too with the PIO and the emergency center as well.
In SEMA.
Yeah, because they need, we want them to see what we're putting out, and then they help us spread the word too, and they have their news
And
conferences.
does SEMA actually have control over that in
Well,
a hurricane situation? Would they have to?
Erica has left, but there's a countywide emergency plan
Right.
that,
Yeah, there's one
we follow
directive that we're all following.
Yeah.
And we don't decide it, we just add our part to it. We don't tell them what we're gonna do, they tell us, pretty much. All right, financial, Terry.
So the financial update is in your package. It includes September's financial statements. We're on budget and on trend. I wanted to spend my time talking about your green notebook. We have administratively reviewed the procurement policy, the accounting policy, and the Title VI program. Our Title VI program is another FTA mandated program that has to be revised and updated every 3 years. So because of the comprehensive nature of these policies, we've printed them out for you, and we will give you this month to review. If you have any questions about any of the policies, you can email them. We can talk about them at committee. There is a control log for each that shows you what changes were made from the most recent approved version. The changes are either detail enhancements recommended by one of 3 FTA reviewers, or regulation updates because the FTA has enacted new laws, or administrative changes based on staff roles and movements. So the notebook is 3 policies reviewed by staff and revised, ready for your review, and we'll ask you to approve those next month.
And I saw some highlighting, so we don't have to read.
Yes.
I
So there's a
appreciate that a
control
lot,
log.
because there's a lot of.
It tells you what's changed, and if we need to break up the approvals to give the board more time, we could kind of do an order. The Title VI is more important because we're in the cycle where we've got to.
So we should read Title VI first. in
Title
case we
VI
don't get to
first,
anything else.
right,
Yes.
and maybe we come back with the Title
Controls
VI
a whole
approval
lot.
request and postpone the others for future months to give you more time, because the Title VI is the one that's in cycle for FTA
Yeah,
concurrence.
We don't have to
I'd like
approve them all in one
Let's
meeting.
suggest that we do that. Let's just
Title
plan
VI
on
next
doing
month,
it.
and we
Because
will
it's
talk
a lot
in
of-
committee about the timeline on the others.
And Bill's campaigning, so he's busy.
Well, there are other boards I'm sitting on that have
Right.
agendas as well.
I don't
Yeah.
even want to read all of them
And
by
they
next month,
are,
and this
they're
is my
60
board.
to 80 page policies, and the changes may only be 1 or 2 pages, but it's important policy, and I want to
Yeah.
give everybody as much time as they need to be comfortable.
And essentially, we don't have a choice.
Nope.
This is MTA mandated, whether or not we like the policy or not. They
So
say
why do
we
we
have
even
to
need to
follow
read it?
Because they require the board to review and approve it as part of their regulations.
Bill, you didn't have to tell everybody we're not going to read it. You should have just not read it.
I did have one other comment about
Go ahead.
the financial.
I like the covers, by the way, the cat green.
Yeah, the financial report, I was thrilled to see that you're predicting $3.3 million at the end of the year.
Yes, sir. Now, in the
That's a
first
guarantee,
quarter.
right?
No.
Yes.
It's under guarantee
During the
by
first
prediction.
quarter of any fiscal year, that projection is less and less accurate. As we roll out our programs and start spending our money, that number will go down, but I'm hoping to keep it above $1 million so we can keep our trend of being better than budget for 3 years in a row. It will go down as we start doing the things we budgeted for, but it's a healthy bottom line right now.
Time being, yes.
It's a timing thing.
We're paying bills on time right now.
Yes.
We're getting money.
Yes.
We don't have
We're
any
not
old-
behind in the bills like we used to be. We have survived the 3-month low period of transit tax receipts. When we go into November, we'll have our last year audited numbers, and that'll give me a feel for how much to move into the cash reserve. And we'll have the money with the November tax receipt to do that. And then with December, we'll have the largest tax receipt, and then we manage and oversee and divvy it out so that we make it to June.
And in January, we don't have to make $1 million note.
We do not. We do
No,
not.
no
But we've
mas.
budgeted that for other programs, and
And the fact that we have decided not to move forward with the transit design was Jared and Associates, that money we have not paid them go back into.
we will have to ask for a bill for their time to date, and we will pay them current for their work. So there will be some portion of the $278,000 contract that we won't have to pay, but it won't be substantial because they've been working with staff and with the public for months. We've been working on this for 1.5 years. We've had community workshops, community outreach. So we've probably paid them about 80% of that $280,000.
We're only going to say.
For work already.
Already done, yes
Already
ma'am.
paid.
So we can't not pay them for work they have done under that contract.
Oh,
So
yes.
we're probably 200 and
40.
at least a little over 200,000 into it. And this action today has suspended that. So we will notify the contractor and they will prorate and send us a bill for work today.
Any other questions for Terry? Let's quickly hit the 3 old business points. The bus stops removal in Thunderbolt, I understand that's been completed.
Correct.
And we are still going to meet with them again over the option plan that was offered, or has that been suspended?
No.
There wasn't an additional meeting planned. The conversations we had in committee where staff brought Thunderbolt suggestions to the group, they wanted that mentioned in the board meeting today. So we just planned on letting everybody know the stops were removed, that when we do change our service or make modifications, we'll keep access for Thunderbolt in mind within the parameters we have, and that we will continue to assist them if they want to join our transit district.
There was a discussion about moving some of the stops within the city limits so that.
Closer to Thunderbolt, right. So when we do make route modifications or route changes, we will try to do those in a way that takes that into consideration. Basically, though, they're going to be moving stops that City of Savannah pays for to increase the convenience for people who don't pay for the service. So we'll have to put it in the conversation, but there's no guarantee that we will do that. They're trying to get access to service that other people are paying for, is what it boils down to. So we'll do everything we can to make it as convenient to everybody to access our transportation, but we can't favor a non-paying or a non-transit tax municipality over the areas that do pay the tax for the
But the
service.
discussion was more about the people who live in the city of Savannah, who have to go into Thunderbolt.
We're not going to be able to stop in Thunderbolt at all.
No,
So
but if we move the stop within the city limits, would we not be accommodating the city people who go into Thunderbolt?
the stops
That's
are
my
within
question.
2 blocks of the
Yeah,
city
they are.
limit right now. So
Right.
they're walkable.
Yeah.
They're very close now. The Falcon Avenue and then the one on Victory.
Drive, right.
Yeah. So we would be making an adjustment to save a half a block. So they're fairly close now. But the alternative was received by the town of Thunderbolt, and staff's response was, we will put it on our list, and when we do make changes, we will consider your suggestion. We
It's
can't
not-
say right now that we're going to do that.
It's not fair to move the stops that are being paid for to accommodate Thunderbolt, because they're just trying to get service without paying for service.
Right, I got that
I mean,
part.
that's not fair. And the stops right now are really close to Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt should pay the minuscule amount it's going to cost them
Per household.
per household, so that we can have the stops. Instead of making it seem like CAT is being unfair to Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt wants service, but they do not want to pay for service. And their citizens are angry because now they have no stops. And so to placate their citizens, they said it's our fault. So they said, so that y'all can look good, move the stops closer into Thunderbolt. But then you're gonna put a stop that's been there forever, that the citizens in Savannah pay for, so that they gotta walk an extra 2 blocks
To get to the stop.
to get to a stop, because Thunderbolt wants it for free. I mean, Thunderbolt is being unreasonable.
And that's gonna happen with
And we
everybody
need to
then.
tell everybody that Thunderbolt is being unreasonable.
Because next, Pooler will want them closer to Pooler.
Yeah, Pooler will want them,
Everybody will want
and
them
Garden
closer,
City
so
will
they don't
want
have to
them.
pay.
And it's not fair.
We're already talking about struggling
Transportation.
for money.
You know, everybody does not have a car. And for people to assume that transportation has to be available quasi, if it's a convenient for the people who drive cars, is unfair. Thunderbolt is being unfair. Thunderbolt says, I want it, but I don't want to pay for it, and I don't want to look bad not paying for it. So make me look good and let the other people pay for it, but I'm going to take credit for it. So you think when they go to their campaigns, the next time if we move that stop, they're not going to say, we maintained bus service for you. That's not fair.
No, and we can't do it, it's illegal.
And we can continue to help the citizens move through the process to opt in to the transit district, and that is the fix. If they opt in, then we can assess the tax and we can provide reasonable service to the town of Thunderbolt.
So how are we gonna help the citizens?
When I was in the public meetings, I offered that as the legislative alternative to losing the service, and I offered to help any of the town council or the mayor or the administrator or the citizens that were at that meeting walk through that process. So if the town of Thunderbolt wants CAT to help them opt in, we've had those conversations in the past, and we can continue them in the future and help them go to the county and request that they're included in the transit district.
The original letter that was sent by the former executive director to the mayor of Thunderbolt, which I happened to write, and the executive director signed it, provided a step-by-step roadmap for how to do this.
And they said no. So we have no control. But we can't accommodate them and expect no one else to ask for the same accommodations, because everybody who pays now say, well, that stop's too far from my house, I want you to move it 2 blocks closer to me. And the person on the list guy said, well, it's gonna be 4 blocks from me, and I don't, you know, we're gonna get into a mess we can't control and we can't solve.
It's probably not my place to say this, but I will say that the news reports in the newspaper and on television were not nearly as negative as they could have been.
Yes.
Or the people of Thunderbolt might have wanted them to be. And I attribute that to some very good PR work that was done by everybody involved, the spokespersons and those who helped craft PR for this.
Thank you.
It was sticky.
Led the charge.
It was
We
gonna
really
be a
do
very
appreciate
sticky
everything.
process, no matter how we did it.
I'd just like to add that as well. I think this is like one of the first times I've seen CAT actually take a stand and take a line and say no and stand up for its own accountability and its own sustainability as an
To
organization.
the taxpayers who pay.
To the taxpayers who pay, to its organizational inertia. And I think also we're all still here and nothing has exploded. And now now people can see the value of what we do, especially when it's not there.
It's very important that we control the narrative
I know, we
of
did a
our
great job at it.
activity.
Yeah.
It's
Only
very
this one.
important that we speak out, that we say what it is, that we say what we're doing, that we say who opposed us when we did it, and be very plain in our language, and educate people as to what CAT is, what CAT does, who CAT serves, and why CAT has a purpose and what that purpose is.
There's an old expression that the people of Sunvolt need to heed, and that is you never miss your water till the well runs dry.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this happened, didn't this happen with the opposite side of the highways down in Fort Wentworth when we were dropping off on one side?
Garden City.
We weren't picking up on the other, and they wanted over there, but those people didn't want to pay. So we couldn't pick up over there.
Right.
So, and that's going to continue to happen because we're already accommodating Pooler by going out to the Highlands with the 17 houses out there to drop off people who work in Pooler. So we have to consider, is that something we should be
We're not
doing too
stopping
down the road?
We're not stopping.
We don't stop in Pooler, but we put a stop right there so they can get to work from that spot. Do we pick up anybody from Savannah out there that's in the paying districts? That's the question mark.
They should be in Pooler anyway.
Especially the outlets.
Well, and, you know, we're gonna have that right along for the next 10 years, and we have to learn to say no when we can't do it. Because if we extend any further, we're gonna have no service.
But we're gonna also probably start having people have accidents walking from the airport to the.
Of course they are.
I mean, they're literally taking the bus to the airport so that they can walk to the outlet.
Of course, and when they do that construction and all that's closed down, there no walking.
Yeah.
Because that's coming up very quick.
I mean, it's people should know that the bus is not at the outlets. We get asked about that all the
Constantly.
time. And
Not
people
by
should
choice.
know the bus is not at the outlet because Pula does not want a city bus in Pula.
That's right, all that crime is not gonna happen in Pooler.
Well, it's the congestion that a bus creates in a city full of automobiles.
Well, it does too. You can ride down Abercorn when the bus stops
But it's
on
Friday.
Abercorn and there's a line of cars behind them. And they can't get out of that lane because they didn't realize the big green thing in front of them is gonna stop.
Yeah.
So get in the middle lane.
But
or
they
the
didn't
left lane.
use, but they, in all fairness, Pula did not use congestion as the reason they did not want
No, there
the
were
bus
others.
out there. They used crime. And never in the history of crime has anybody used a city bus as a getaway vehicle.
Well, they do in New York.
They do in
That's
New
the
York.
big- yeah. There are exceptions to all the rules. Okay, passenger amenities. I know Mike spoke with Steve. We will have the shelter locations for the 10 new parts coming in by December, probably not until January or February for installation.
Yeah, we have to look at some ABC
The
data.
shelter locations are still, a problem to a degree, is that I don't think we have brought up to our board about the locations. A number of people that are in this room have, passed by in their vehicle and seen, people either standing up or that thing that they did before, put out that high hat type thing was ridiculous. It takes maybe one or two people to, on that, and we can get a really better image if we can get more money for those shelters, put in there. Sometimes you can go by these bus stops and you see there might be 6 or 7, 8, 10 people there. You've got a few places that are like that. But we really and truly need more efforts
on that, and then we see if we can get all of our legislators to come out, and those legislators work to get us more money. And some of that information that he gave today, you know, in certain situations, but it'll be good if we can, you know, put out these shelters, and hopefully it won't take, you know, take something away from where the shelters are now if they're not used very much. And I think what will help us if we get the bus drivers to see how many, give them a little tablet or something where they can put down there how many people are at that shelter.
The pair boxes does that for us. It'll tell us
Yeah,
how
you
many
can see that.
passengers at every stop.
The EPC data actually does
Well,
that.
it doesn't
And it depends
necessarily.
on when you go by. If it's rush hour, they're gonna be crowded at 3 a.m. or
Yeah, but
2
all
o'clock
they
in the
gotta do,
afternoon.
it doesn't take but a moment, is just write down how many people were there, whether it was, you know, whatever time it was.
Yeah, the computer will do all that. It's already in the system. We just have to make those decisions.
Well, it's not being used, in some instances, it's not being used now.
We didn't have any shelters to put out.
Yeah, we haven't put up any
The 10 new
shelters.
shelters are coming in December.
Have we chosen the site yet?
No, what we have to do.
Well, we were waiting to see if we were gonna change the sites before we put anything in. And there's probably 20% that we actually have control over the site, where we own the land and can put in a shelter and put down the concrete slab. And I know there's a lot where it's stuck on a place where there's no road and no sidewalks.
Well, one of the things I was wondering, I know we talked about approaching businesses, especially on Abercorn. Abercorn is like a major vein in Savannah, and
The major, yeah.
it's pretty major. And to have, it looks bad for so many poles, just empty poles with people just there.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, not that every street in Savannah is not important, but as a tourist city, where and us trying to encourage transportation, it's not very encouraging to see somebody sitting on an anthill to say that they want to come ride.
So we need shelters everywhere.
We have 1,300 bus stops around the city.
But maybe we could.
300 are actually property where we could put a shelter.
Right, but one of the things we talked about was approaching businesses where there was an active, busy business near a bus stop to see if people wanted to sponsor shelters.
Well, they're gonna have to sponsor the sidewalks too, I believe, to get handicapped people to a shelter.
But some of these businesses can do that.
Some may.
I mean, some of them can do that. You may have more than we think that would do that.
And that's gonna be for the future, because the amount we have to pay to, it's like $1.5 million to put in shelters.
But I do think we should ask staff to approach businesses, or, you know,
Especially if they're new.
or just basically send out a letter. Hey, you're a business, you're on this route, would you be interested in sponsoring a bus shelter? And we just put a little plaque with their name on it.
Yeah, that can be decided in the committees to where we want to go with that.
And I think one of the things I think Pete was talking about was, for example, you've got a shelter at Walmart, and there's a number of people that get on and off that bus.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking the one on Montgomery Crossroad.
Well, we have 3, that's what
I'm
I'm
talking the one on
asking.
Montgomery Crossroad specifically. And he's correct, there's a lot of people standing because there's not enough space on, you know, under the shelter, even when it's raining.
Mhm.
And I agree with her. And also coming along that same corridor, they've demolished these whatever it was over there, and they're building new shopping center right across from Walmart. So I agree with you. If you give them, you know, that's free advertisement as well.
To get a plaque? Oh, yeah.
And the kind of money Walmart takes from this community.
Because that shopping center where Michael's is, they sold.
The one on
Con-
Abercorn.
Yeah, they sold bricks and slabs on the sidewalk to make the sidewalk go all the way around. And so people have their names. They bought stuff.
So I know the group will not be surprised, but the FTA has some regulations that apply here. You have to have a service guideline and a systematic way to determine where you put the bus stop, and then of course you're going to run the bus to the bus stop.
No, I'm
So
not
you
talking about
have to-
changing the bus stop.
Right,
I'm just
but-
about just getting them to pay for a shelter.
Right, so we have to internally do some statistics and follow some regulations about fair allocation of available resource. It's a Title VI issue. Which bus goes on which route and which location gets a shelter has to be statistically assessed. We don't have as much free choice, I guess, is the information I'm trying to share.
But I'm not opposed to us doing that. I'm not opposed to us figuring out statistically which shelter can we sell.
Well, you would have to amend your advertising policy that you all passed in March.
And now we
You
know.
passed an advertising policy prohibiting ads on the buses, commercial ads, on the shelters, and at the bus stops.
But that was our choice. We can amend that at
Right,
any time.
right. I just wanted to
And
point
we
that
can be
out.
as specific as we want to, and we can determine what size, shape, and format the advertising can be of.
Yeah, the committees can start working on that.
Yeah.
Going
I don't
forward.
think, I don't think that those are insurmountable problems.
Not saying you can't do any of it. We
Right.
just need to put it in the framework of regulations. If you sell a bus stop to a company that's across the street from where one is now, that's time, every time a bus goes by, and it's time in our service hours annually, that's gonna cost us operating money outside of the bus stop. When we put that bus stop at the Walmart on the other side of Savannah Mall, we calculated how much just going in there was gonna cost, and it was $570,000 a year just for our buses to go through that stop.
Right.
So,
but I'm
y'all
not
can
talking about
do any
adding-
of this, we just have to
right.
make sure we
But I'm not talking about
incorporate-
adding any new stops.
You're just talking about
Only letting people sponsor shelters for existing bus stops.
I think that would be called an adopt a stop program.
Yeah.
Something like that,
I've looked
yeah.
into that before.
And-
Which is a public-private partnership.
And
Which
for
is
one thing, why, if Walmart's concerned, why didn't they just add to the shelter? I mean, they have more money than we do. If they decide
did we
that-
tell them it's an option?
I don't think
actually-
we can stop them. It's
The one
their
at-
property, isn't it?
The one at Savannah Mall, the one across from Savannah Mall, Walmart built.
It's a double. It's a double wide. It's, well.
You have to keep in mind too that there are city ordinances that
There are,
either
that too.
prohibit or regulate
The shelters.
advertising at bus stops and bus shelters.
And the shelters, locations. are
But I
all
think that we
regulated.
can, I think that we
Yeah, we
can
can go forward with
comply
that.
with all of those things and still let people pay for one.
Yeah, well, let's
I mean,
do that
it's a-
in
I mean, it's a-
committee, because
yeah, it's a-
everybody
it's
else
a-
is not here. It's going to be other
I mean,
opinions.
it's a rule. We all know how to comply with rules.
Yep. And I
I
have
don't
one
think it's-
question that came up. What's with the lollipops?
What?
So they were grandfathered in as a condition.
No, I'm saying, who replaces them? Do we do that?
The what?
We have, but
They're stealing the
We-
lollipops.
We have some, but
have
we
some, but we're not gonna be buying any
don't
new
order any new ones.
May not be a bad
maintains
idea
them?
for
Is
us
that
to have a board decision next month so that we can just be done with
That'll
that.
go
Because
through
artists hit
committee.
me up about, I got a lot, and I was like, I'm not interested in funding this anymore.
It was a condition of SHPO signing off on this
They don't
building.
take our award away though.
Yeah.
What is SHPO?
You've
The
got a lot of
historic
people that's.
preservation,
We've got a lot
sign
of
off
people.
on environmental, it was one of the conditions to build these two projects that we built in 12 and 13, the historic.
Well, they came
I
out
can
of-
look at the notes, I don't want to speak
Yeah,
from my
let's
memory
not get
from
too
8 years
deep into
ago,
lollipops.
but there was
We're
a
not replacing
condition
them.
for
That's all
us
other than
to
That-
get this building
That
built.
came out of Chad taking them down.
Right,
Yeah.
He was
that's
removing
right.
them.
Yeah, he did. He
There was an
took them
outcry
down.
against that. It was part of.
We were not
historic
involved
environment.
in
I still have
putting
saved my
them up.
bus stop button.
We just took them down and they demanded we put them back.
Well, do they provide us with lollipops?
No, they were ours.
They've been
They were
stealing
the
the
original
tops
bus
because it's a
stop.
memento.
Oh.
Good,
We
people.
got
They did not
several
provide it.
people there that used the bus to get to work. And when it starts raining, they have to be at work, you know. Now, some of them started carrying an umbrella, but some people, you know, don't have that. And so I think we just need more information there, and also to speak to our legislators to see about if we can get some additional monies for these particular places.
You're gonna have to lobby the county.
The best thing to do
They're our
with
primary
the-
funding source.
The best thing to do at the bus stops is to make sure that riders are hanging out at bus stops as small as possible for as little time as possible. It really means having higher frequency. But I guess
Do you have your, do you wanna go into your task
No.
force, or you wanna hold it until next month? But I had to quit. I saw that email going around about the lollipops, and do we have someone said we had a mold to make them, and I'm like, wait a minute, what the heck are we doing?
I think we should.
I'm sure we haven't made any in a long time, because those go back.
Do we have any?
They would have been Savannah Transit, they would have been city.
Do we have a
right?
box of them somewhere?
Well,
I don't think so.
Savannah Transit Authority was independent also, but
Yeah.
it was funded by the city more at that time.
I was just wondering who in town would have made them.
Do we have any?
Well, it might not
I
have been
suspect they were made in
box.
Birmingham.
We have a
We can go to the lollipop shop, and
auction
then,
them off.
okay.
We have a handful.
You know, maybe we should set up like a cat museum for old artifacts.
It sounds
You
complicated.
have to put it up the boards
It was in the plan, it was in the plans, and it's
I
part
mean,
of
it
what
could
the-
just be a wall in here.
We got a couple of
The
buses that were
plaque
saved back at the Transit Museum.
Use the bus for the museum.
Photographs.
And tokens, yeah.
Tokens.
That was part of the
When we
plan
get
for the
more money
library and stuff
than
that
we
was
know
in
what
the
to do with, we'll look into the museum.
All right.
Next.
I think that ends my list.
Can we move to adjourn?
New business, there's
Chairman,
nothing,
adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
Well, I'm ready to get him to do that.
Great. Thank you.
We're done. A little longer than normal. Look at all your
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I'm leaving my computer. I don't use it at all, so like. The iPad. Yeah, he doesn't want it. He said keep it. Well, I was thinking maybe I will. I really don't need the phone